Yes, good morning guys ulit, no? Nandito ulit tayo sa ating Arson Investigation. Okay, this is part of my discussion guys. Pinutol ko muna ng una kasi medyo masakit siya sa pakiramdam. Okay? Okay, we have here guys the building construction and its component in Arson Investigation. Okay guys, occupancy and classification. We have assembly occupancies, educational occupancies, healthcare occupancies, detention and correctional occupancies, residential occupancies, and mercantile occupancies. Ang dami guys, no? Now we proceed to assembly occupancies guys. Include but are not limited to all buildings or portion of building used for gatherings of 50 or more person for such purpose as deliberation, worship, entertainment, eating, drinking, amusement, or awaiting transportation. Yung assembly of occupancies natin guys, the best example for this matter, yung mga, yan guys, no, parang ito ay studio, studio type, pero medyo malaki kasi 50 or more person yung, the purpose is deliberation for example, meeting, no? This is classroom guys, no? We consider just the assembly of occupancies na kung saan meron tayong meeting, no? Not meeting but also a review na ginagawa natin. We consider this as assembly occupancies. Okay? Educational occupancies include all buildings or portion of building used for educational purposes. Educational occupancies also include daycare centers. For this example, guys, we can consider the schools itself, no? This is educational occupancies. Dito sa assembly of occupancies, more in private kasi, no? Pwede siyang more in private and more in in the area kung saan talaga madalas mag-meeting yung mga tao. Since this is a school, we consider this as also educational occupancies. Okay? We have healthcare occupancies, guys. Are used to provide medical or other treatment or care for a person suffering from physical or mental illness, disease or infirmity and care of the infants, convalescents or infirm aged person. In the healthcare occupancies, guys, we consider this in the hospital. No? Some different hospital, we consider that ang healthcare occupancies. No? We discussed, guys, the building construction its component. Kasi pagdating sa arson investigation, no? Kasi iba-iba namang building ang nasusunog, iba-ibang bahay din ang nasusunog, so that we can know what occupancies has been set afire of the arsonist person. No? Ano ba yung iba't ibang uri ng occupancies na tinatawag natin, mga kaibigan? Okay? Yan guys, detention and correctional occupancies are those used to house occupants under some degree of restraint and security. Detention and correctional occupancies are occupied by persons who mostly are incapable of self-preservation because of security measures not under the occupant's control. In the detention correctional occupancies, guys, we consider that this matter in our country also in Bureau of Jail Management Penology and Bureau of Correction, no? Yung ating mga 7 penal farm colony, ang ating municipal, city, provincial jail, we consider that as a detention and correctional occupancies. In the residential occupancies naman guys, are those in which sleeping accommodation provided for normal residential purposes such as apartment, hotels and motels, dormitories, lodging, rooming, houses, and 1 and 2 family dwellings. In the residential occupancies, from the word itself, this is the sleeping accommodation of all people or citizen. No? We consider as a residential occupancies. Sa mercantile occupancies, mga kaibigan, includes markets and other rooms, building, or structure for the display and sale of merchandise. No? For example, the best example for this matter, yung nating mga SM, no? Mercury Drug, Watson, and other market that included in the mercantile occupancies. Business sector, no guys? Yung mga business na nagbibigay ng mga serbisyo publiko para sa mga tao, pribado man ito o publiko, yan, we consider that our mercantile occupancies. Kapag ito ay ginamit nila sa mga business nila. Yan. Business occupancies, guys, yan. Almost the same siya ni mercantile occupancies, guys. Dito. Yan. Includes store, markets, and the rooms, buildings. We consider that also, guys, yung mga condominium type. So business occupancies are used for the transaction of business for the keep. Yan na lang, guys, no? Parang, yan. Clarification includes store, markets, and other rooms, building, and structure for the display, sale of merchandise. Almost the same po siya ni business occupancies. Are used for the transaction of business for the keeping of occupants or accounts and records for the other similar purposes. Doctors and lawyers, officers are included in this category, no? Ito sa business occupancies, no? Doon nabanggit ko na, guys, in terms of business, na kung ikaw ay nagtayo ng business sa isang lugar o sa isang building, we consider that as a business occupancies. Kung ikaw ay isang doktor na nagtayo ng clinic doon sa building, we consider that as occupancies or business occupancies. Kung ikaw ay isang lawyer nagtayo ng notary public doon sa area mo, that we considered a business occupancies itself. Okay? Industrial occupancies, guys, include factories making products of all kinds and properties devoted to operations such as processing, assembling, mixing, packaging, finishing, or decorating, and repairing. Dito sa industrial occupancies, guys, we consider this matter in mga, guys, yung mga pabrika, no? Mga pabrika ng sabon, pabrika ng gamit, pabrika ng mga packaging ng decorating, or repairing, no? Yan, we consider as industrial occupancies. Storage occupancies, guys, include all building or structure used primarily for the storage or sheltering of goods, merchandise, products, vehicles, or animals. Kung ang purpose mo, guys, ay mag-store ng kung ano-anong bagay upang ito ay mapanatiling maayos, we consider this as a storage occupancies. Okay? Wait lang. Yan, structure of loads. Structure loads. We have dead load. Dead load is defined as the weight of the building itself and equipment permanently attached or built in. Additional dead loads may be added to a structure during alteration without any straightening of the structure. Additions such as rooftop, air conditioning units may cause early structure failure under the fire condition. Dito sa dead load, guys, ito yung mga attachment in the building, no? Kung ikaw ay nagtayo ng building na malaki, guys, tapos marami kang pinag-attach, guys, na kung saan kasama siya doon sa building, we consider that a dead load. Pero kapag mas marami, ito nga, guys, oh, nagkakaroon po ng failure of structure of failure sa building, guys, kapag yung mga pinaglalagay mo ay hindi akma doon sa building na tinatayuan mo, di ba? Alam na po ng mga engineer yan, no? Since hindi ako engineer, you can ask them. Pero sa dead load, guys, kapag ito ay sobra na, hindi po tama sa bigat o hindi po tama ang pagkakalagay ng mga dead load natin, according to Bureau of Fire Protection Procedure or the manual of the Bureau of Fire, that will be considered as a structure failure, no? Ang katagalan talaga, guys, ito ay lalabas sa kusa dahil sa hindi maayos na paglalagay ng mga dead load na to. Kasi ito yung mga pabigat na tinatawag natin sa building natin. Permanently attached na sa building yan. Ngayon, kung hindi tugma o hindi tama ang paglalagay mo, that we considered as a structure failure. Okay? Live loads, guys, are any other loads other than dead loads. This includes furniture and occupants, no? Sa live loads, guys, we consider this kapag ikaw ay nakatira sa building, no? Lalo na sa mga condominium type, you consider that a live loads, yung mga pinapasok dyan, furniture, yung mga occupants natin, that we consider a live loads. Impact loads, guys, are those which are delivered in a short period of time. This would include such as things as overturning of heavy object, example, safe, the collapse of heavy non-constructural ornamental masonry onto a roof, or firefighter jumping onto a floor or a roof. Ito, guys, dito sa impact loads, we consider this a short period of time that included in overturning of heavy object, no? Like safe, no? Ito, guys, yung for example, you have a kung ikaw ay merong idadagdag dun sa building mo o meron ka pang gustong ilagay, ito rin ang magsisilbing pabigat, no? Parang dead load din na kung saan ay hindi kasama dun sa non-constructural, ibig sabihin hindi kasama dun sa building itself, but hiwalay na hiwalay na idea. We consider this an impact load. Other terms to remember in firefighting, guys. Mga dapat natin pong tandaan pagdating sa firefighting. Okay? The ventilation, a technique for opening a burning building to allow the escape of heated gases and smoke to prevent explosive concentration and allow an advancement of hose line into the structure. Yung ventilation na tinatawag natin, guys, 'di ba, pag sa mga nagluluto, no, especially in the condominium type, guys, no, meron silang mga ventilation diyan, guys. Ito po ang nagsisilbi o technique din ng isang structural building o ng mga engineer natin upang pag nagkaroon ng sunog, guys, meron kagad paglalabasan yung mga usok na tinatawag natin. So that yung mga person doon sa nakatira doon o yung occupants natin in the building will be safe also. Not also will be safe but also to minimize the casualties itself. Yan po yung silbi ng mga ventilation natin. The has extended outside the structure or compartment by destroying the windows or burning an opening in the roof of our walls. Yan, guys. Ito yung outside of the building or the extended version sa vented natin para kung ikaw ay nakulong na, guys, kung ikaw ay wala na talagang wala nang takas, pwede mong sirain yung mga pwede mong way of exit will be considered in the windows, no? Yan yung mga roof as opening na para ikaw ay makatakas dun sa area. Kasi pag hindi ka tumakas, guys, ay baka maluto ka dun, mga kaibigan. At kapag naluto ka, tapos na ang karir natin yan. Yan, guys, arson law in the Philippine settings. Nandito na tayo sa arson law in the Philippine settings. The law presumes that a fire is, guys, the blank in origin. Law presumes that a fire is, guys, A, criminal, B, negligent, C, accidental, or D, intentional. Ang ating mga apoy o fire na pinipresume po ng law as A, accidental. Pero makikita natin kung bakit nga. Fire caused by accident or negligence constitutes arson. This statement is. Ito yung mga guys, no? Yung possibly true, possibly false, wholly true, wholly false. What is the fact, no? What is the answer for this matter? Wholly false, guys. Fire caused by accident or negligence constitute arson. This statement is wholly false. Tama ba to? Ang apoy, accident, or negligence constitute arson. Makikita natin dito. Yan, guys. Arson investigation. Arson, the malicious destruction of property by means of fire. The malicious destruction of property by means of fire. Malicious intent of the offender must be proved, otherwise no crime exists. Kapag hindi po natin approve yung arson natin, wala talagang crime, no? There's no crime if there is no evidence that can proceed for the person in the guilt. You cannot predict or you cannot hindi mo po pwedeng sabihin kriminal ang isang tao kung ito ay hindi napapatunayan ng Korte Suprema o walang hatol ng Korte Suprema beyond reasonable doubt na siya ay mayroong kasalanan. Okay? The law presumes that a fire is accidental, mga kaibigan. In origin, hence, criminal design must be shown. Okay? Kung ikaw ay kung ito ay may criminal design, kailangan po natin, or this ay intentionally fire setting, you can present an evidence to the court so that we can proceed that this is not an accidental arson. Okay? Fire caused by accident or criminal design must be shown. Kailangan mapatunayan bago nating masabi na ito ay It's either accidental or intentionally. Pare cause, ayan. Pero the law presume guys, no, sa law, sa batas natin, pinipresume po na lahat ng kaso ng arson we consider as an accidental. Pero ngayon po sa Pilipinas natin, sa Philippine settings natin, no, hindi basta-basta maniniwala nagkaroon ng ano yan, accidental. Kailangan magkaroon na what is the origin or the cause of fire, kung saan po ba nagsimula yung fire na tinatawag natin. Fire caused by accidental or negligence do not constitute arson. Yan guys. Kung ito po ba ang fire natin is accidental or negligence, hindi daw nag-constitute ito sa arson natin. In arson investigation. The purpose of arson investigation guys are, sorry for the background, to determine the origin of the fire. Yes, we need to do that, no? Saan ba nagsimula ang apoy? To determine the cause and nature and the initial fuel and means of ignition. Kailangan po natin malaman kung anong mga ginamit na trailer, kung saan po nilagay ito sa plant natin, at kung ano po yung mga ignition na ginamit upang ito ay maging mabisa, no? Para ma-set a fire nila to. To determine if it is an accidental fire or intentionally set fire. Kailangan po natin malaman to mga kaibigan, no? Kasi mayroong mga building na sinusunog for the purpose of insurance. Okay? Was intentionally set. What was it set with willful malice to destroy property, or was it set to destroy unwanted personal property without intent to harm or defraud another? Kung ito ay intentionally, we need to know or we need to conduct an investigation or arson investigation itself. Kung ano ba ang mga motibo upang kung bakit niya ba sinunog yung building na yun. Okay? Question guys. Cardo intended to burn a wooden house of walk-in. He collected rags soaked in gasoline and placed it inside the wall. But when he was about to light it, he was seen by Mr. John Tolotok T. Makatulslok Jr., who ran after him. Cardo is liable of A. Malicious mischief, B. Attempted arson, C. Frustrated arson, or D. Consummated arson. Nagkaroon ng ng interference pagdating sa action na gagawin ni Cardo. No? Nakita kasi ni Toloktok o ni Jan. What will we be considered on this matter? Letter B. Attempted arson. In terms of this matter guys, no, we need to identify the element itself. No? Hindi pwede natin sasagutin. Alam niyo guys, no? Sa criminal jurisprudence natin, alam niyo na yan. Yung mga stages of crime na tinatawag natin. Attempted, frustrated, and consummated. Dapat alam natin yung meaning guys so that we can answer directly. Masagutan natin na maayos yung bawat question natin. Okay. In the same situation beforehand, if Cardo was able to light the rags, but the fire was put out before any part of the building was burned, he is liable of the crime of, guys? A. Malicious mischief, B. Attempted arson, C. Frustrated arson, or D. Consummated arson. We consider this a frustrated arson, guys. Kasi nagkaroon na siya ng nasindihan na po ni Cardo, tapos nagkaroon na ng sunog. But before na kumalat yung sunog, ay naapula kagad, no? That we consider yan. Yan. Pero kahit kakunti lang guys, no? Kahit konti lang guys na apoy na ano mo dun sa building guys, we consider that as a frustrated arson, no? Hindi naman kailangan buong building ang masunog bago masabing frustrated arson. Pag consummated arson guys, ibig sabihin yan, in the same situation, if before the fire was put out, the wall of the door of the building was burned, Cardo is liable with consummated arson guys. Kung ito ay umabot na sa door, no, dun sa building talaga itself, talagang we consider as a consummated arson. Okay, mag-iingat tayo mga kaibigan, huwag kayo maglalaro basta-basta ng apoy. Kasi kapag nagkaroon na, nasunog mo kagad, no, daplis lang, nasunog mo. We consider that a consummated arson. And consummated arson is very grave offense guys, no? Mga kaibigan, malaki po ang penalty regarding that matter sa ating arson. Yan guys, stages in commission of arson, we have attentive, prostrated, and consummated. Yan guys, yung mga lumabas kanina. Attentive arson, prostrated arson, and consummated arson. Consummated arson, way back October 2012 and October 2013, lumabas po siya. Burning contents of the building only. Yan guys. US, ito meron tayong mga supporting documents na nagpapatunay na kahit konti lang yan guys. No? Sa stages of commission of the crime natin will be considered that as a crime itself. US versus Go Su 25 Philippine 187. Case setting. Yan. Fire to the context of the building, notwithstanding that the fire is extinguished before each actually consumed, any part of the building is consummated arson. Burning of a bed only. Yan guys. Kung ito guys ay part of the building na, we consider that as consummated arson. May ingat-ingat tayo dyan. The method of proof in arson, physical evidence in arson are often destroyed. The proof corpus delicti must be shown and the identity of the arsonist must be established. Corpus delicti guys, the fact that the crime was committed must be shown by the following: burning, criminal design, and evidence of intent. No? Ito yung method para mapatunayan po natin na yung arson ay talagang nangyari. No? Yung corpus delicti guys, no? The body of the crime or the body of the building of the crime that we consider as an arson or that we considered as a proof of arson. Basta pumasok dito guys sa burning, criminal design, and evidence of the intent. Okay? Burning guys, that there was a fire will be shown by the direct testimony of complainant, firemen responding to the crime, and other eyewitness. Burn parts of the building may also be used to indicate location. Ang mga burning parts po guys, ito po ang magsisilbing idea o magsisilbing yung ebidensya upang ito ay patunayan sa Korte Suprema na nagkaroon po ng burning na tinatawag. Yung criminal design natin guys, or this as a intentionally, no, must show that it was willfully and intentionally done. The presence of the incendiary devices flammable such as gasoline, kerosene may indicate the fire was not accidental. Kung ito guys, nakakita tayo sa area ng mga yan, kerosene, gasoline dun sa area, we consider that guys an accelerant to the commission of the crime. And yan, papasok sa accelerant, si flange, si trailer, tapos si set of fire. Kung paano ba i-ignite ang criminal design mo. That is unintentional, not an accidental. No? Dalawa kasi ang uri ng arson natin, intentional or accidental. Okay? But we consider the criminal design as unintentional. Evidence of intent guys, when valuables were removed before the fire, ill feeling between the accused and the occupants of the building, burn, absent of an effort to put out the fire such as other indicators. Ito guys, kung dito sa building na evidence of intent, kung ang intention guys ay insurance, no? Sa mga insurance kasi yan guys. Tapos tinanggal mo yung mga gamit mo dun sa bahay mo. Alam mo naman, magagaling ng mga insurance investigator natin ngayon. Alam kagad nila yan that you have a criminal design to set a fire to get your insurance in the building. No? Yan, make sure na magaling talaga kayo dyan. Legal provision guys related to arson under RPC or the Revised Penal Code. Burning of any arson shipyard, storehouses, or military powder or fireworks factory, ordnance, or storehouse, archive, or general museum of the government. Burning of any passenger, train, or motor vehicle in motion or vessel out of port. This is guys an arson, no? We consider this an arson sa Revised Penal Code natin. Burning of inhabited place or any storehouse or factory of inflammable or explosive materials. It must be of the private ownership. It must be inhabited place. Or burning of any theater, church, cockpit, other building where meetings are held, were occupied by numerous assembly. Other form of arson guys, Article 321. This is the form of arson also. And other form of the arson, Article 321. Nandito pa rin po tayo sa Revised Penal Code natin. We consider this guys in the last part of the Criminal Law Book 2. Setting to fire building, farmhouse, warehouse, hut, shelter, o vessel in port knowing it to be occupied at that time by one or more person. Kung alam mo guys na ito, nag-set ka ng fire tapos magkakaroon pala ng tao dito sa mga susunod na araw na magre-renta dito, talaga nag-set ka ng fire, we consider that an arson also. Building burned in a public purpose is thought destroy, evidence kept therein to be used in legislative, judicial, or administrative proceeding, irrespective of damage, if the evidence is to be used against the defendant of any crime punishable under the existing law. Kung sinunog mo po ang ebidensya dun sa building guys, no? Yan nagkaroon ng murder case dun sa area. Tapos ang purpose mo ay matanggal lahat ng ebidensya. Use the arson itself, or you've set a fire in the area. We consider in Article 321 as an arson. Burn building is a public and the purpose is to destroy evidence kept therein to be used in instituting prosecution for punishment of violators of law irrespective of the amount of the damage. Yan po, sa Article 321, included in other forms of arson. Other forms of arson also, building of the building for dwelling purposes located in an uninhabited place. Uninhabited place guys, no? Ito yung building, no? Merong, ito yung mga parang mga bakanteng lote yan. We consider that an uninhabited place. Grain field, pasture land, forest or plantings, burning of sugar mill, farm mill, mill central, bamboo groves, or any similar plantation. Okay? Arson of property of small value, Article 323. Burning of any uninhabited hut, storehouse, barn, shed, or any other property of value which does not exceed 25 pesos, committed at a time of other circumstances which clearly include all danger of the fire spreading. Kung ikaw guys, kahit maliit na value lang yan, we consider that an arson, no? Kasi property po yan. Article 323, we consider that as arson. Kahit maliit lang yan guys, talagang kung ito ay nagkakalaga ng 25 pesos at kung nag-exceed to guys, yan, you consider that an arson. Burning of one's own property guys, Article 325 RPC, na Revised Penal Code pa rin po tayo. As a means of committing arson, this article punishes the burning of one's own property for the purpose of committing arson as a great destruction of property. Kung ikaw po guys, yung one's own property, sinunog mo sarili mong property guys, we consider that as also as an arson. No? Na pagtripan mo lang, gusto mo sunugin yung bahay mo, no? Hindi lang bahay mong nasunog, pati lahat ng kapitbahay mo nasunog din. May namatay pa. We consider that as arson also. Article 325 of RPC or the Revised Penal Code. Article 326 guys, setting fire to property exclusively owned by the offender. The purpose is to defraud or cause damage to another. Damage is actually caused upon another property. Even such purpose is absent. Things burned in a building in uninhabited place. And guys, setting fire to property to exclusively owned by the offender. Article 326. Sa PD 1613 natin guys, amending law of arson. PD 1613, this is the amended by the law by the President Marcos during that time, no? Presidential degree natin. Section 4, special aggravating circumstances in arson. Na pumasok na guys si Jamaa. Revised Penal Code natin, si Jamaa, justifying, exempting, aggravating alternative. Mitigating, no? Pumasok na guys. If committed with intent to gain, yan. Sa Section 4 according to the PD 1630, Section 4 guys, kung ang ito intent to gain, if committed for benefits of another, kung ito ay may benepisyo para hindi lang sa iyo kundi pati sa ibang tao. If the offender is motivated by spite or hatred toward the owner of occupant of the property burned, and if committed by syndicate. Yan, amending law of arson. This is a special aggravating circumstances. Aggravating guys, di ba? This is increasing of the offense that you committed. Di ba? Kung maalala natin. The offense is committed by syndicate if it is a plan or carried out by group of 3 or more person. Yan. Ban. Yan, yung ban. BAND natin. Dun sa ating revised penal code. We consider that an PD 16 or amending law of arson. Yan guys, prima facie evidence of arson. Any of the following circumstances shall constitute the prima facie evidence of the arson. Pumasok guys yung criminal jurisprudence natin in the terms of the evidence, no? Sa evidence subject natin in the 4th year class. No? If the fire started simultaneously in more than one part of the building or establishment, if the substantial amount of flammable substance or materials are stored within the building, not necessary in the building of the offender nor household use. If the gasoline, kerosene, petroleum, or other flammable or combustible substance or materials soaked therewith or containers thereof, or any mechanical, electrical, chemical, or electronic contrivance designed to start a fire or usher or traces or any of the foregoing are found in the ruins and premises of the burned building or property. If the building or property is insured for substantially more than its actual value at the time of the issuance of the policy. This we consider guys a prima facie evidence of arson. Ito po ay malaking tulong pagdating sa evidence natin. Ito mga naka-included dito. Yan. Also this, if during the lifetime of the corresponding fire, insurance policy more than 2 fires have occurred in the same or other premises owned or under the control of the offender and or insured. If shortly before the fire a substantial portion of the effects insured and stored in the building or property had been withdrawn from the premises except in the ordinary course or business. If a demand for money or other valuable consideration was made before the fire in exchange for the distance of the offender for the safety of the person or property of the victim. This is we consider the prima facie evidence in the arson investigation. Yan guys, confiscation of object of arson. Section 8, according to Section 8, the building which is the object of arson, including the land or which is situated, shall be confiscated and excheated to the state unless the owner thereof can prove that he has no participation and nor knowledge of such arson despite the exercise of due diligence or his part. Lahat po ng mga mga nasunog dun sa area, no, kung ito ay malaking tulong pagdating sa ebidensya na makakatulong po sa proceeding ng court natin, yan, kukunin po ng korte, kukunin po ng government yan, at ito'y gagawing ebidensya, no? Unless na lang kung ma-prove mo na ikaw ay walang participation dun sa nangyaring sunog, no, dun sa arson na yun. Ito, this is sample cases guys. Reyes, 2001, there is no complex crime of arson. If by reason of or on occasion of arson death result, the penalty of reclusion perpetua to death shall be imposed. Homicide is absurd. Yan guys, no complex crime in arson guys, no complex. Ibig sabihin, kung ang resulta nito po ay kamatayan, gusto mo intentionally patayin yung tao, that we considered an arson death result, no? The penalty nito ay reclusion perpetua. Mag-a-absurd lang po yung homicide dun sa arson natin. Ayan, as for to conceal a crime, ito po yung mga iba't ibang kaso. Ginamit po yung paglikha ng sunog para matago o ma-conceal yung crime na tinatawag natin. Campanilla guys, 2003. If a crime committed to conceal another crime, Article 48 on complex crime proper will apply because the former is not a necessary means to commit the latter. Logic dictates that a crime may not be possibly be a means to commit another crime which was already committed. Doing means subsequent to the end and just placing a cart ahead of the horse. No. Kung ang tao ay patay na tapos yung means of concealment mo ay magsunog para masabi mo na namatay sa sunog yung tao, no. That we considered as an arson, no. We consider a murder guys, no. We consider as a murder na kasi pinatay mo siya. Pinatay mo yung tao, ang ginamit mo lang yung arson, no. People versus Percival. After committing homicide, makikita natin dun sa mga ano ba yung different. People versus Percival. After committing homicide, the defendant in order to conceal his crime set fire to the house where it has been perpetrated was not necessary means to commit the arson. Nor in this case of the single act constitute two or more crimes, no. Isa lang po ang ginawa niya, pero dalawa po ang naging resulta. No? That we considered sa ang gusto niya patayin si Pedro o si Bersaval dito sa ano. Ayan, na-commit niya ng homicide guys, no? Pero ang concealment niya, yung nabanggit ko nga sa inyo, talagang magkaroon ng sunog para sabihin na namatay sa sunog yung tao. But iisa lang po ang pwede nating ikaso doon. Depende kung ano yung nauna. They are the independent acts constituting two distinct crimes. Homicide and arson. Now destructive arson with qualifying circumstances of intent to conceal. Ito yung guys, yung pwede nating ilagay doon. Arson with robbery. Burning the house for the sole purpose of committing robbery was treated as ordinary aggravating circumstances of committing crime by means of campanilla. Dito guys. Gusto mo nagnakaw ka sa area pero para matago mo yung o ma-conceal mo yung crime mo, sinunog mo na lang, no? That we considered as an campanilla. However, Article 294 as amended by Republic Act 7659 tama. When robbery is accompanied with arson, the crime committed is the special complex crime of robbery with arson. No? Dami na naman. Nandito na naman tayo doon. Special complex crime of arson guys, no? O robbery with arson. Dalawa po yun. Ibig sabihin, dalawang kaso sa isang bagay. One constitute of two or more cases. Depende sa pwede mong ikaso sa tao. Yan guys. Pedro intended to kill his neighbor Juan, who is inside the house. He resorted to burn the house in order to effect his goal, which causes the death of Juan. What is the crime committed by Pedro? A. Arson, B. Murder, C. Homicide, or D. Arson and murder. We consider this guys is as a murder only, no? Kasi intended mo nang patayin si Juan guys, no? Ang means ng intent mo para patayin siya sunugin yung bahay niya. We consider that as a murder only, no? This is a very grave offense. Ito yung pinakamalaking kaso na pwede mong ikaso sa tao. Pedro killed Petra at the middle of their argument inside the motel room. In order to conceal the crime, he burned the room they occupied, which caused almost the entire edifice to burn. What is the crime committed by Pedro? This is arson or murder. Arson and murder, no? To conceal the crime itself, no? Napatay mo na si Petra, napatay na si Petra. Ngayon, gusto mo magkaroon ng concealment o matago yung crime. No, dalawang crime yung nagawa dito. Arson and murder. Ito guys, nagpapatunay. Burning in death, arson, murder of arson, and homicide or murder. April and October 2013 and April 2014, lumabas sa board examination guys. Na? Main objective, burning of the building or edifice that by reason or on the occasion of arson, October 2013. Crime committed, arson only. Homicide is absurd in arson. Kung ang purpose natin guys, ang main objective natin, ay patayin, yan. Yan guys, ang crime committed dito is arson, no? Yung homicide na absorb na dun sa arson. Okay? Kill a particular person who may be a building or edifice by resorted to as a means to accomplish such goal. Kung ang killing mo guys ay patayin lang talaga si means mo yung pirate setting natin, yan, we consider that an murder only. Kasi doon guys, magkaiba dito, doon sa pangatlo, no? Ang ginawa niya is pinatay niya muna, pinatay niya guys, tapos concealment niya yung arson, no? Magkaibang kaso yun. Kill a particular person by resorted to as a means to of cover up killing. Crime committed, two distinct crimes guys. It's either homicide or murder, depending on the attending circumstances. And we have also an arson these cases. Yan, motives in arson. Kanya-kanyang motibo pagdating sa arson guys. Pwede natin, pakita natin sa inyo guys yung aking viewers and understanding the origins and cause of investigation.
Hello and welcome to Fire Tech Talk, the Brooks Equipment video series where we discuss everything from products all the way to codes and regulations. I'm your host, Jacob Duncan, here today with Charlie Sullivan. Charlie, it's great to have you on.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So today what we're going to be doing is discussing fire investigations, which are technically called origin and cause investigations. So my first question for you, what is an origin and cause investigation and why do we have them?
Investigators need to come in and determine where the fire originated, what caused the fire, and this is why we have these types of investigations. So it starts at the inception. The fire department gets the call. They come out and they're going to determine, was the fire intentional, was it unintentional or accidental, and that will determine how their investigation moves forward. So if the fire investigators come out from the fire department and they determine it was an intentional fire, arson, they're going to move forward with an investigation on their end, and eventually they will release that case after they've made their final determination. Then the insurance company will step in with their own experts and they're going to take it to another level, determine is there anybody else who may be in fault here, somebody we can point the finger at. And it's not so much pointing a finger, but can the insurance company get any money back from other companies? So if they can lower what they may be paying out, they're going to try and get other people to pony up some money and bring it to a different level where it starts to be an equal playing field.
Are origin and cause investigations done after every fire, or is it only if there is suspected criminality?
A fire investigation is conducted after every reported fire. So if the fire department gets called out, there will be some type of investigation to determine what happened. If it's a little trash can fire or something like that, it probably goes no further. But if it's a larger fire, if there's a lot of damage, then the investigation will move forward. And again, they're going to look at intentional or unintentional.
What are the steps in completing a origin and cause investigation? Where do you start the process and who all is involved?
The fire department starts the process when they arrive at the scene. They want to determine the area of origin. So they're going to look carefully at everything. They're going to determine where did the fire start? Was it intentional? So they may start looking for accelerants. Or was it unintentional, accidental? At that point, most fire departments' investigations stop there. The scene is released and it gets turned over to the insurance companies. At that point, the investigation starts moving in a different direction, and you'll have an expert for the insurance company who comes into the scene. He determines, are there any other potential players here? Anybody else who may have been involved that this is the reason? Did we have an appliance fail? Was there a leaky gas line? Did we have bad electrical wiring? They want to determine, is there somebody else that there's, possibly that some blame can be pointed at.
So what are some examples of common problems in an origin and cause investigation?
In a fire investigation, one of the common problems is when we first get involved with the scene, things have been altered. So we arrive at the scene and let's say it's on a cooking line, appliances have been pulled out and they've been moved around the kitchen, the filters, the grease filters in the hood have been removed, they haven't been numbered, we don't know where they were. So a lot of things get moved around. It's really hard for an investigator, we may be looking for a burn pattern on an appliance and then we don't know where the appliance initially was. Now we start relying on the fire department who may have taken pictures and we start to recreate the scene from their pictures. In some cases, we don't have pictures. We start looking at inspection reports from service companies. Where were these things based on your reports? And we start to put things back in place and try and recreate the scene as best we can. But the biggest drawback is alteration of the scene after the fire.
Thank you so much for spending this time today and teaching me, as well as our audience, about the subject and the work that you do. So thank you again.
Napakaganda ng ano nyo guys, ng explanation regarding the arson. Okay? Kasi nga naman, iba't ibang motibo, no? At also, kapag nagkaroon po ng arson guys, ito isa sa mga pinakamahirap imbestigahan. Kasi lahat ng imbestigahan mo, puro sunog. Saan ka magsisimula, no? Hanapin mo muna yung origin of fire, no? Kung saan nagsimula yung sunog, no? Cause and effect ng fire na pinagmulan nito. Okay? We go back guys, the motive in arson. Yan. Motive defined as this refers to the cause, reason, or incentive that induces or prompts specific reason. No? In legal, it explains why offender committed the illegal act. Ito po yung mga motibo, no? Sa madaling salita, sa Tagalog version, yung mga motibo. Bakit nga ba nagawa ni offender na magkaroon ng arson? Paano niya nasunog yung mga bagay-bagay na yan? Establishing the motives. In criminal prosecution, motive is necessary to identify the accused. Thereafter, intent can be shown easily. Kailangan po nating unang makita yung motibo ng isang criminal o offender party kung bakit niya ba nagawa yung crime na yun. Pwede pumasok guys dito si Mio, si motive, intent, opportunity, yung crime triangle natin. Motives for arson can range from attempts to collect insurance money, to revenge or intimidation, attempts to cover up crime, distraction or questionable business records, paranoia or occasional suicide. Ito, ang mga motibo daw, karaniwang motibo pag nagsiset of fire is insurance claim. No? Yan po. Nakita natin sa video kanina guys, ang sabi doon, if intentionally, papasok po si Arson Investigator. If not intentionally, papasok po si insurance. No? Si insurance po ang mag-iimbestiga regarding the incident happen. Yan, nagpapasaan kasi yan guys, no? Kung si fire officer ay nakita niya na wala naman talagang not intentionally po yung pagkasunog sa area, ibibigay niya po kay insurance company yan. Kasi si insurance company magkakandak din ng sarili niyang investigation regarding the incident happen in the area. Kasi ang laki kasi ng insurance guys, no? Kapag insured yung building mo, no? Lalo na kung bulok na ito pero naka-insured to, malaki po ang makukuha natin dyan. Okay? The most common type of arson is a fire set attempts to collect insurance money. Yes, guys. Yan naman talaga ang totoo, no? Kung minsan, lalo na kung malalaking building to, kung malalaking pabrika to, kung malalaking talagang naka-insured tong building na to, insurance money talagang kinukuha nila dyan. Nagsiset sila ng fire kung paano ba nila masasabing not intentionally or this we consider an accidental. Yan. NCAC, Classification of Motives in Arson. National Center for Analysis of Violent Crime classified motives of arson is profit, fraud, yes. Commercial fraud, residential fraud. Vandalism and thrill-seeking. Malicious fire setting that damage property seemingly at random and with no identifiable purpose. Example, juvenile fire setting, yung mga batang mahilig magsunog ng kung saan-saan, no? Mahilig magsunog ng mga dayami, as nasunog na buong area. Vandalism and thrill-seeking. Excitement and thrill-seeking, guys. Hero type arsonist, no? Yan guys, no? Mas masaya siya pag nakita ng sunog, guys. Yung mga motibo niya. Yan, hero type siya. Revenge, retaliation, or spite, crime concealment, extremist, or social protest, and terrorism. That was classification motives in the arson. Yan guys, profit and fraud. Isa-isay natin. Insurance fraud with the accused benefiting, coupled with the fact that assured would be transferred to another location. Desire to dispose merchandise stock on hand may have lost market value being out of season. Lack of raw materials, oversupply of merchandise. Existing business transaction which the arsonist would like to avoid, such as impending liquidation, settlement of state, need for cash, prospectivity, business failure, and increased rentals. No? Ito po yung mga reason o motibo ng isang kriminal o isang offender para mag-set of fire para ito ay maiwasan. Ito yung mga dahilan nila, yung profit and fraud natin. Contracts, contractor seeking to make repairs. Public adjuster, an independent contractor hired by the insured who works for percentage of the claim, seeking contract. Salvage, dealer seeking contract or mortgage holder needing a cash. Ito yung sa contracts natin. Kapag ito ay napatunayang accidental, pwede itong pumasok dito guys. Profit by the perpetrator other than the assured. Insurance agent wishing business with the assured. Business competitors planning to drive others. Person seeking job as a protection personnel such as security agencies. Salvagers and contractor wishing to construct another building. Ayan. Perpetrator other than accused. No? Hindi lang siya isa lang guys. No? Ibig sabihin, grupo sila. No? Yung assurance na tinatawag natin, yung perpetrator, hindi lang isang maapektuhan kundi marami. Ibig sabihin, magkaroon ng maraming benepisyo regarding the arson o the profit itself kung siya ay magsiset of fire. Arson for profit fires that can be associated with a both direct and indirect gain include organized crime. The fire may be used for extortion, intimidation, elimination of competition, or insurance fraud. Yan, grupo, no? Karaniwang grupo, mga sindikato, organized crime. Gumagawa sila ng, nagkaroon sila ng extortion. Pag hindi mo sinunog yung building mo, no? Pag hindi mo nakuha yung insurance claim mo, papatayin ko buong pamilya mo. That we consider as an organized crime, no? But, yan, yung tinatawag natin, uncontrollable fear or forcible fear na tinatawag natin sa revised penal code natin, no? Wala siyang choice kundi gumawa ng mga bagay upang mapanatili ang buhay niya. Welfare fraud, guys. Individual desire new different housing. Victim moves to the top of waiting list or receive assistance from various agencies, Red Cross or the government. Occasionally, an individual receive additional money, food, stamp, or clothing for the inconvenience of the fire. Ito, welfare fraud, guys. At the same scenario, the same yung motibo mo guys, ay talagang magkaroon ng receive assistance para other government institution. Yan, welfare fraud na po ang tawag dyan. Insurance coverage, the amount of insurance is relative to the needs of the firefighter. Fraud can be used in both increase or decrease insurance coverage. An increase usually is direct gain, whereas decrease may be remove suspicious. Depende po sa sunog, depende po sa area na nasunog yung insurance claim natin. Kung ang buong area po, sinunog mo talaga yung buong building mo, that will be direct gain. Ibig sabihin, mas suspicious siya. Pero kung meron mga konting parte lang, no, hindi na siya masyadong suspicious. No? Pag sinunog mo talaga yung buong building, guys, no, pagiging gahaman na yan, no, you're very greedy to claim all the insurance claim. Yan guys, revenge, spite, jealousy. Ang mga yan, having revenge, spite, and jealousy, this is the motive of a person to create a fire arson. No? Ito po yung mga nag-uudyok sa isang tao para mag-create siya ng fire na tinatawag natin because of the revenge, spite, and jealousy na tinatawag po natin. Sa sobrang galit, sa sobrang selos, nag-create siya ng arson na tinatawag po natin. Yan po ay isa sa mga motibo ng isang arsonist person. Crime or concealment diversionary tactics. Kung ang purpose po natin ay matago o matago yung mga ginawa po nating mga unang crime, concealment of the crime, that we considered as a motive of a person. Punitive measure guys, to inflict injury to another due to hatred, jealous, or revenge. Yan yung punitive measure natin. Dala ng galit, dala ng selos, dala ng hatred and revenge, dala na gusto mo makipagigante, we consider that a punitive measure. Ito po ay isa sa mga kunikonsidera ng isang arson investigator regarding the incident happen itself. Intimidation or economic disabling. These are the sabotage or saboteurs, strikers, and racketeer to intimidate management or employees. No? Kung ang purpose po natin ay magkaroon ng sabotage sa area o strikers or racketeering dun sa area guys, ito yung tinatawag natin intimidation or economic disabling. Paromania guys, paramanya o paromania. The uncontrollable impulse of a reason to burn or anything without any motivation. They do not run from the fire scene since they love watching fire burning. No? Kung ikaw ay isang paromania guys, no? Gustong-gusto mo nakakita ng apoy, ayaw mo umalis sa area, hindi ka nasasatisfied until na hindi pa maapula yung apoy. Yan, yun yung tinatawag natin paromania guys. No? Karaniwan guys, yan, si fire investigator o si fire investigation itself, pagdating niya po sa area, nagkakandak din kagad ng interview guys. No? Nagkakandak kagad ng tinatawag natin background investigation regarding the incident happen. Tinitignan kagad ng area guys. No? Kung may nakita siyang tawa ng tawa dun sa area, no? Despite na malawak na yung sunog, pwede niya po itong interviewin kagad. No? Ba't ka tawa ng tawa? Kita mo naman sunog na yung area nyo. That is will we consider as suspicious. Oh, pwede natin siyang maging suspect dun sa area na yan. Kasi karaniwan po ng mga fire setter, mas gusto po nilang nakikita actual yung sunog na area. Mukha bang nasusunog yung area. Types of pyromania, guys: abnormal youth, such as epileptics, imbecile, and morons. Abnormal youth. Hero type: a person set a building on fire, pretends to discover it, turn in the alarm, or make some rescue words to appear as a hero. Yan, guys, no? May tumawag sa fire station. Sir, may nasusunog po dito sa area namin. No, hero type yan, guys, no? Tapos yun, siya pa yung mga pabida-bida dito sa area. Yan, no? Tutulungan niya pa yung bombero, no? Yung sasabihin niya. Would consider this a hero type o pyromania hero type. Drug addicts and alcoholics, sexual deviants, and distorted individuals. We consider these types of pyromania in the area of this matter. Other motives, guys: professional torts. The arsonist for hire is extremely difficult to identify because such individuals have no apparent link to the fire. However, the victim is also under the suspicious in many instances. Yan, sa professional torts, no, nag-hire ka pa ng arsonist para makapagsunog ng area o para masunog mo yung area, guys. We consider that as a professional tort, no? Pero karaniwan, guys, no, sa mga instances, ang madalas pagsospetsahan, guys, ay yung mga tao, yung mga biktima mismo. Yan. Juvenile fire setter. A review of the literature reveals a distinction between fire play and fire setting behavior. Fire play conveys a low level of intent to inflict harm and absent of malice. Rather, it involves curiosity and fascination. Fire setting is decidedly different and involved in malice and intent to inflict harm. Putnam and Kirkpatrick as cited by Hess, etc. Yan, juvenile fire setter. Yung mga juvenile, pag sinabi natin juvenile from the word itself, guys, ito yung mga bata, no? From the word curiosity, napapascinate sila kung ano ba yung mga i-inflict nitong fire na to, no? Gustong-gusto nila makita kung ano ba yan. Talaga nag-set sila, guys, no? We consider as a juvenile fire setter. Juvenile fire setter, guys, are often divided into 4 categories: curiosity, experimental, trouble crisis, delinquent criminal, and pathological emotional disturbance. Pag sinabi po natin the curiosity fire setter, are mainly children between age 2 to 10 who experiment with cause of accidental fires. Ito po yung mga bata, no? 2 hanggang 10 taong gulang, because of the curiosity kung ano ba yung apoy na to, no? Naglalaro sila ng apoy, mga posporo, no? Yung lalo na yung ganyan. Tapos ipipitikin nila, no? Yung naglalaro sila ng ganon. We consider that a curiosity fire setter. The trouble crisis fire setter are mostly boys of any ages whose fire setting represent underlying psychological, psychosocial conflicts, no? Sa trouble crisis fire setter, karaniwan lalaki po. No? Delinquent and criminal fire setter are adolescent between age 13 and 18. With long history of undetected fire setting who start fire as an act of vandalism or malicious mischief but always with an intent to destroy. Kung ikaw ay delinquenteng bata o criminal fire setter, we consider that a delinquent or criminal fire setter at the age of 13 to 18. Yung mga paulit-ulit na gumagawa ng crime, no? Pero ang purpose talaga nila is intent to destroy. Pathological emotionally disturbed fire setters. Action result from psychological or conflict destroyed property. These fire setters can be boys or girls or any age and typically display a chronic history of behavioral social problems. No? Sa pathological emotionally disturbed fire setter, guys, ito yung mga hindi na kinayanan yung problema, hindi na kinaya kung ano yung mga nararanasan nila sa buhay because of psychosocial conflict and sa emotionally disturbed na sila, hindi na nila na-control. No? Nagkakandak na lang sila ng fire setter, no? Para mapansin sila. We consider that a pathological and emotional disturbed fire setters. Yan, guys, sabotage and radical terrorism. Fire has always been successful tool in radical and terrorist in many countries of the world. The use of arson in the American Civil War is well documented. Sabotage by fire and bombing during the World War I and World War II are common knowledge. This was also true in the Korean War and Vietnam conflict, no? Yung pagsasabotay o radical terrorism, guys, fire is the result of the successful tool in radical terrorism, no? Ito, lagi naman natin nakikita, no? So, World War I, World War II, kung mababalikan po natin yung history, kung lagi rin kayo nanonood ng mga documentaries, they use a fire, no? To sabotage each institution. Para masabotahe o para, yan. Kunyari, dun sa area nila, merong may mga granada o merong mga pasabog, no? The purpose of the fire setting is to have a sabotaging, no? We consider as sabotage and radical terrorism. Saboteurs and terrorism work basically the same way, no? Yung pagkakaroon ng sabotahe at pagkakandak ng terrorism ay parehas lang po sila kung paano ba nila ginagawa yung mga bagay na yun. They are all going directed, having a purpose or cause. They differ only in that the saboteurs discriminate in directing their activities toward a particular group or person. Terrorists do not. No? Ibig sabihin guys, dito sa sabotage guys, meron lang particular group na sasabotahin niya. Pagdating sa kumpanya, di ba? Sa mga kumpanya, meron ang gustong sabotahin, no? Ang lakas ng business din no kabila, ano? Gagawin ko, susunugin ko yung mga materials nila. Yan, particular group siya. Pero dito sa terrorism, do not guys. No? Their target group is universal. Ibig sabihin, marami yan. Hindi sila pumipili. Kundi, their desire is to intimidate and create fear of the part of the victims or potential victims. Ibig sabihin guys, ang desire nila is magkaroon ng intimidation, magkaroon ng potential victims in regarding this matter. Okay? Methods employed by arsonists. Alam na natin ito guys, no? Methods employed by arsonists guys. Introduction incendiary materials such as liquid in the form of gasoline, either which may not require open flame for ignition, alcohol, kerosene, turpentine, or diesel fuel gas. Diesel fuel and gas. Introduction incendiary materials. Ito yung mga ginagamit guys in terms of arson. Certain gases which when mixed with air possess excellent ignition property and when present in a closed area can lead to explosion such as acetylene, carbon monoxide, natural gas, ethylene, hydrogen, and propane. Solid guys, when solid exists in a finely ground or powder condition, they form an excellent to combustible substance. Some substances generate intense heat or contact with water or give oxygen or decomposition. Example, chlorates, perchlorates, chromates, nitrates. Yan, solids natin. Introduction to incendiary materials. Ito guys, yung mga sa isang fire setter, ito yung mga way of thinking kung paano niya gagawin. O ito yung mga materials, no? Ito yung mga things na pwede niyang gawin. Fuel and gases guys, gasoline. One of the characteristics of gasoline is the explode. A fact that a few arsonists realize. No? Yung gasoline guys ay isa sa mga exploded material na pwedeng gamitin in the arson. No? Yung alcohol guys is another flammable liquid that can be used. It easily ignite will burn rapidly and by itself gives off no detectable smoke. However, unless very large quantities are used, alcohol will not transmit a great deal of heat to the surrounding areas. No? Yan, sa alcohol guys is the way of fuel din yan. Kung meron ka ng set of fire, pwede mo na siyang lagyan ng alcohol para mas lumaki pa. No? Yan yung alcohol. Almost any flammable liquid can be used as a fuel. Each has its own set of plus-minus factors. Some will explode, some are very difficult to ignite unless large quantities are used, or some more volatile flammable liquid is used a primer, others leave telltale traces or give detectable smoke in odors. Depende sa yung pagkagamitan. Lahat po ng pwedeng masunog o yung fuel capacity natin, lahat po ng pwedeng mangyari, pwede talagang dito sa flammable liquid na tinatawag po natin. Okay? Use of plant or other contrivance. Plants are devices which are designed to ignite combustible materials sometimes after the initiating action. The arsonist therefore will have the opportunity to escape from the premises. These are, ito guys, ito yung mga devices of plant. O paano ba mag-i-ignite yung combustible material na nilagay mo doon, yung mga trade accelerants na nilagay mo doon, no? Dito papasok yan, guys. Heating appliances such as flat iron, toaster, soldering iron, hot plates, lamp which are placed in contact with combustible materials and abandoned until fire start. Yan. Ikaw ay nagsimula ng yan, nagpainit ka ng ano ba? Iron yung ano ba? Tawag doon. Plancha, no? Pinainit mo talaga ng gusto. Oh, kasi pag sumobrang init niyan, guys, di ba? Talagang mag-aano yan, magkukos ng fire yan. We consider das yan, sa plants natin. Sparklers such as electrical switches, doorbells, short circuit telephone boxes which are placed very near a volatile fluid emitting vapor with a high concentration. Once spark emitted, it's enough to produce a fire. Yung mga madalas, yung mga faulty wiring natin, alam mo na kung saan mo pwedeng iset yung plant na tinatawag natin or devices natin, no? Yung accelerant natin, no? Pinalant mo na siya doon, guys. Talagang magkukos ng fire yan. Yan is the way of the method of the arsonist also. Yan. The 2.2 mechanical devices, yan, plants. Clock mechanical which can be arranged so that movement start the fire. Gumawa ka ng isang mechanical devices, plants natin, upang magkaroon ka ng set of time kung kailan ba magsisimula yung ignition of fire na tinatawag natin. Altered equipment such as broken pipes or on oil burner or sprinkler system in which combustible fluid has been placed. Depende kung paano mo ginawa, guys. Ito yung mga arson devices, guys, no? This item used in this arson igniting device including an electrical timer, an appliance cord, matches, or shredded paper. Lupit, no? This is a plant, accelerant, no? Depende kung paano nila ginawa. Malulupit kasi yung mga gumagawa, lalo na yung mga professional arsonist na tinatawag natin na talagang hinahire upang hindi talaga makita kung saan nagsimula yung sunog. Plant is arson, the material placed around the ignition device to feed the flame. Yan, guys, ito yung plant na tinatawag natin. Kung saan mayroong mga fuel o kung saan mabilis o mag-ignite yung tinatawag natin na fire. Yan. Kung saan madalis mag-spread. Depende. Accelerant imparts starting any flammable fluid or compound that speed the progress of a fire. Also called a booster. Yung fuel, guys, no? Especially, guys, yung mga gasoline natin, no? Kung si plant, nilagay niya yung plant, nilagay niya sa malapit na area. Ngayon, si accelerant, guys, once na ito yung fluid material natin o compound, yan, ito yung magiging booster, no? Once na ito ay nag-start si plant, no? Nag-ignite na siya. Yan. Sasabog ka agad yan, guys, no? Depende kung anong gamit. Yan. Problem in arson investigation. Ang daming problema sa arson investigation, guys. Sa totoo lang, 'di ba? Maraming problema diyan. Kasi ito ang isa sa pinakamahirap na imbestigahan. Kasi lahat po ng ebidensya na pwede nating gamitin ay sunog. Authority and responsibility to investigate arson cases. Chapter 4, Section 54 of RA 6975, provided that the Fire Bureau, the BFP, shall be responsible for the prevention and suppression of all destructive fire on building, houses, and other structure, forests, land transportation, vehicles and equipment, ship or vessel, dock at piers or wharves, or anchored in a major seaport, petroleum industry installation, plane crashes, and other similar incidents, as well as the enforcement of the fire code and other related laws. The Fire Bureau or the BFP shall have the power to investigate all causes of a fire and, if necessary, file the proper complaints with the city or provincial prosecutor who has jurisdiction over the case. Dito sa Article 4, Section 15 of a Revised Penal Code of 6975, guys, o the BFP rules. Si Bureau of Fire Protection, guys, yung kapangyarihan niya talaga yan, guys, no? In terms na magkaroon ng fire setting in the area, not particularly in the building, but also dito sa mga nabanggit, guys. Sila po ang nagsisilbing investigator itself, no? Mangingialam lang po si police officer kung merong mga cases na pwedeng iambag siya, no? Na ito kasi pwedeng si Arson Investigation Officer, ipapasa niya rin po yan kay police officer. But si Fire Bureau of Investigation, since this is his expertise, dito alam niya talaga to kasi ito yung trabaho niya. we consider that also an expert witness in the court proceeding. No? Kung matatandaan po natin mga expert witness natin. Depende kung saan ka magaling at depende kung ano yung maiaambag mo in terms of the investigation process or the proceeding has been started. Republic Act 9263, or commonly known as the Bureau of Fire Protection and Bureau of Jail Management and Penology Professionalization of Act of 2004, which was approved on March 10, 2004, amended some of the provision of the Republic Act 6975 to further strengthen government capability aimed toward the strengthening of the delivery of basic services to the citizenry through the institutionalization of highly efficient and competent fire and jail services. Ngayon, si 6975 guys, ibig sabihin ng amended, no, mas pinalakas, mas pinalawak, o mayroong mga dinagdag na mas makakatulong dito sa BFP and BJMP. Kasi dun sa Republic Act 6975 natin guys, particularly speaking, kasi tatlo po sila, di ba? The Philippine National Police, the BJMP, and the BFP. Ngayon kung mapapansin po natin, si Philippine National Police, ay meron po rin siyang hiwalay na batas, no? Republic Act 8551, kung matatandaan po natin. Ngayon dito sa 6975, nagkaroon din ng enhancement dito sa 9263, na kung saan si Bureau of Fire Protection and BJMP nagkaroon po ng professionalization, no? Act of 2004. Kahit papaano, binigyan diin kung paano ba mapapaganda yung sistema ng ating mga bombero at mga jail officer. Okay? This act provide for the professionalization and restructuring of both BFP and the BJMP by upgrading the level of qualification of their uniform personnel and standardizing their base pay, retirement, and other benefits, making it par with those of PNP and the AP. Sa BFP and BJMP, no, mas pinalawak, mas pinaganda because of 9263, no, in terms of uniform personnel, kung ano pong sahod ng PNP personnel at AP personnel, katumbas lang din po ng sahod yan ng BFP and BJMP. Pare-parehas lang po sila ng sahod. Okay? A fire investigation starts with a devastation. In order to successfully investigate fire, the investigator must know the signs of fire, how they start, how they progress, and what indicators are left to help the reconstruct what occurred. A fire investigator without a good grounding in a fire science is an extreme disadvantage, which can ultimately lead to perpetrators going free or innocent people being charged or falsely accused. Guys, pagdating po sa fire investigator, napaka-importante po na ang itatalaga po dito pagdating sa fire arson investigator o fire arson investigation ay marunong talaga guys. So, meron siyang knowledge sa science, may alam niya kung saan nagsimula, kung saan nagsimula yung sunog, ano mga progreso. Kasi guys, kapag nagkaroon po si fire investigator ay hindi niya alam kung saan siya magsisimula o wala talaga siyang alam regarding the fire investigation will be conducted, ay talaga makakalaya po, no? The person behind the arson will be free. Talaga makakalaya at makakalaya yan. Tuwan-tuwa pa yan guys kung hindi siya nakulong, kung hindi mo siya nahanap. Kaya dapat in terms of fire investigation, no, alam po ng mga Bureau of Fire personnel natin yan na kung ano po yung mga bagay. Alam ko nag-aaral sila guys. They conducted a seminar, they conducted a training regarding this matter. No? Nagkaano pa yan guys, schooling pa nga yan kung paano magiging magaling na fire investigator. Okay? Kasi like I said guys, in fire investigation process, one of the hardest thing in a investigation is the fire. Kasi lahat po ng ebidensya na pwede natin gamitin ay sunog. Ngayon, paano mo magagamit ang ebidensya in the court proceeding? Paano mo mapapatunayan sa Korte Suprema na siya ang may kasalanan? Okay? Fire investigation versus arson investigation. In defining our term, the first two are the fire investigation and arson investigation. One is necessary, the same as the other. Fire investigation are started in nearly every fire to determine the origin and cause of the fire. Usually, the cause in accidental or spot grease or stove, an electrical malfunction, a burning cigarette. Sometimes it is on purpose. When there is an evidence that could lead to conclusion that the fire was purposely set, then an arson investigation ensues. No? So the fire investigation, this is the initiator. If the fire is suspicious, then the evidence must be collected properly and the second phase of the investigation must be commenced. The arson investigation centered around how was it done, who had the motive, and if the evidence is necessary to arrest and prosecute the perpetrator available. Most arson cases are circumstantial. Dito sa fire investigation, guys, parang ito pa lang started. Kumbaga sa ating this is the initiator, no? Sila yung nagsisimula kung ano po ba ang pwede nating gamiting ebidensya sa area. Ngayon sa arson investigation, ito na yung process na tinatawag natin. Na kung saan maghahanap po tayo ng mga ebidensya kung ano po ba yung natapos doon sa area. Mostly, guys, sa arson investigation, more in circumstantial evidence po ang ginagamit natin dito, no? Arson technique, guys. In order to determine how a fire started, the investigator must have a working knowledge of how to set a fire. Sa arson technique, dapat ang isang investigator ay alam itong mga bagay na to, guys. Para in order to have a good investigation in the process. Okay? One method of obtaining practical experience is in indulging with the actual fire setting and laboratory set for this purpose. In the US, big city fire departments conduct training session by burning structure and observe in action and patterns other different condition. Guys, kanina yung pinanood natin, di ba? Nagkaroon sila ng setting of fire doon sa area, no? Talagang inaalam nila mabuti, nagka-conduct sila ng training kung saan pa po nagsimula yung sunog, kung saan po yung fire starter ng sunog, at kung ano po yung origin of fire na tinatawag natin. Dito sa Pilipinas, alam ko meron yan, guys. Okay. Ano muna tayo? Ito yung nakalimutan ko yung tawag. Yung parang break time, pero ito, a tip of advice para dun sa mga person, guys, na medyo nahihirapan na pagdating sa review nila. Tutulungan tayo ni Clark TV, mga kaibigan. Laking tulong nito, guys, yung napanood ko to during our time.
This is Clark TV here. Nahirapan ka bang mag-memorize? O kaya naman may mga bagay ka ba na kailangan mong aralin pero hindi mo agad ito maintindihan? Nakakapagtaka at nakakamangha na may mga taong mabilis matuto. Mapaisip ka na lang kung may sikreto ba sila upang maging posible ito, lalo na para sa mga madami ang inaaral. Niwala ka man o sa hindi, ito ay dahil sa mga nakasanayang habits o kaugalian na lagi nilang ginagawa. Kaya naman sila ay mabilis makaintindi ng mga bagong konsepto. Kaya kung gusto mong malaman ang sikreto, sa video na ito pag-uusapan natin ng 10 tricks paano matuto ng mabilis. Kaya, simulan na natin. Number 10. Alamin ng tamang oras na dapat ilaan sa pag-aaral. Alam mo ba na may sapat na oras lang na dapat kang ilaan sa pag-aaral ng mga bagong bagay? Ayon sa mga eksperto ng Louisiana State University's Center for Academic Success, dapat ang oras ng pag-aaral mo para sa isang topic na di mo pa alam ay di dapat bababa ng 30 minuto o 30 minutes. Hindi rin naman ito dapat lumagpas ng sobra-sobra sa 50 minuto dahil maaari kang makaranas ng information overload. Ito ay isang pakaramdam kung saan parang puno na ang iyong utak dahil sa sobrang dami ng iyong inaral. Dapat digsundin ang tinakdang bilang ng oras sa pag-aaral dahil daw kailangan din ng ating utak ng break o pahinga. Number 9. Basahin ng malakas ang mga bagay na gusto mong matandaan. Base sa masusing pag-aaral, ang pagbabasa ng malakas sa mga bagay na gusto mong matandaan ay nakakatulong upang mas matutunan mo ito ng mabilis. Nakakatulong din ito sa information retention para hindi mo mabilis na malimutan ang mga bagay na iyong binasa. Ang speech ay isa sa pinakamabisang paraan para mapabuti ang memorya ng isang tao patungkol sa mga piling impormasyon. Dahil may mga impormasyon na natatandaan lamang natin kapag ito ay ating naririnig. Maliban dito, ang paraang ito ay angkop sa mga taong auditory learners o mas natututo kapag naririnig o pinapakinggan nila ang kanilang pinag-aaralan. Number 8. Magkaroon ng mnemonics. Kung may mga salita o kaya naman ay phrases na kailangan mong tandaan, ay mas maganda kung meron kang mnemonics system na gagamitin upang mas matandaan mo ito. Ang mnemonics ay ang pagkuha sa unang letra ng isang set ng mga salita o phrases na dapat mong kabisaduhin upang makagawa ng isa o marami pang salita na tiyak na tatatak sa iyong isipan. Ito ang magsisilbing pattern para iyong maalala ang original set ng mga salita o phrases na iyong inaaral. Number 7. Umidlip para muling makapag-focus. Tayo ay may mga pagkakataon na napapagod at nawawalan ng gana. Kaya naman kapag sa tingin mo ay pagod ka na sa pag-aaral, huwag kang mag-guilty na umidlip ng panandalian. Kailangan mo yan at kailangan din ito ng utak mo upang makapagpahinga kahit panandalian lamang. Ito ay tinatawag na study nap, power nap o break nap. Pero kahit ano pang tawag dyan ay kailangan mong umidlip para makapag-focus kang muli. Huwag mong kalimutang mag-set ng alarm o di kaya naman ay magpagising sa iyong kasamahan para siguradong magigising ka sa itinakda mong oras. Number 6. Magpanggap na nagtuturo ka sa iba. Isa sa mga paraan kung paano matuto ng mas mabilis ay kung ituturo mo ito sa iba. Ito ay dahil pwede ka nilang questionin kapag may hindi ka naipaliwanag ng maayos o di kaya naman ay kapag may nasabi kang mali. Maaari mo itong gawin sa iyong kapatid, mga magulang at sa iyong mga kaibigan. Pwede mo ding subukan na ipaliwanag ito habang nag-video ka. Maniwala ka man o sa hindi, makakatulong ito upang hindi mo makalimutan ng bagay na iyong inaaral. Number 5. Bigyan ng pagsusulit ang iyong sarili. Makakatulong din upang matutunan mo ang isang bagay ng mas mabilis kung bibigyan mo ng test o pagsusulit ang iyong sarili ng maraming beses. Gawin mo ito sa pamamagitan ng pag-construct o paggawa ng isang questionnaire. Maigi rin kung ipapattern mo ito kung paano magbigay ng exam ang iyong guro o propesor upang ikaw ay mas masanay. Mas okay rin kung magpapagawa ka sa iba o kaya naman ay maghanap ka sa internet ng mga readily available na test questionnaires. Pagkatapos mong sagutan ito, ay tignan mo kung ano ang mga tama at mga mali mong sagot. Mas bigyan mo ng pansin ang mga naging mali mong sagot at muli mo itong pag-aralan. Ito ay isang paraan na din para iyong ma-practice kung talaga bang may nakuha o natandaan ka sa iyong mga binasa o pinag-aralan. Ika nga sa isang tanyag na kasabihan ay practice makes it perfect. Number 4. Palitan ng mga bad study habits. Kung talagang desidido ka na matuto ng mas mabilis ay kasama rin sa proseso ang pagtanggal sa mga bad study habits na nakaugalian mo ng gawin. Kasama na dito ang cramming o yung mag-aaral ka lamang gabi bago ang iyong pagsusulit. Hindi kasi ito nakakatulong dahil imposibleng makabisa mo agad ang napakadaming impormasyon sa isang upuan lamang. Mahirapan ka ding i-retain ang lahat ng inaral mo sa last minute. Kaya sa dami ay paniguradong maghahalo-halo na ang lahat ng iyong pinag-aralan. May mga pag-aaral kasi na nagsasabing mas mahirap mong matandaan ang isang bagay kung pinilit mo itong kabisahin ng sabay-sabay. Hindi din ito maganda dahil maaari kang mapuyat at mawalan ng focus kinabukasan habang ikaw ay nakuha ng pagsusulit. Number 3. Magkaroon ng sapat na tulog. Para mas matuto ng mabilis ay kailangan mo ring siguraduhin na nakakakuha ka ng bastong 8 oras na tulog sa araw-araw. Ito ay para ma-improve ang iyong focus sa bagay na iyong aaralin at para na din maiwasan na ikaw ay antukin sa kalagitnaan ng iyong pagre-review. Ang pagkakaroon ng sapat na tulog ay makakatulong din upang maiwasan ang panglalata ng pangangatawan. Bukod kasi sa pagkain, ang tulog ay parang langis din na nagpapatakbo sa mekanismo ng ating katawan. Ito ay nakakatulong din upang mabigyan ng wastong pahinga ang ating utak upang makapag-function ito ng maayos. Kaya naman, upang mas matuto ng mabilis, ay payo kong matulog ng 8 oras araw-araw. Number 2, isulat mo ang iyong mga notes. Dahil sa pagiging techie ng mga tao ngayon, dahil na rin mayroon ng mga gadgets katulad ng cellphone, laptop at tablet, ay nakakalimutan na natin ang importansya ng pagsusulat. Madalas ay kinukuhanan na lamang natin ng litrato ang mga slides ng ating mga guro, pati na rin ang kanilang mga sinusulat. Maliban dito ay nare-record na lang din natin ang kanilang mga sinasabi. Alam ko namang maraming dahilan kung bakit ganito ang iyong ginagawa. Katulad na lamang ng mga propesor o guro na mabilis maglipat ng slides na kanilang pinepresent. Ngunit kung magre-record ka man o kaya naman kukunan ng litrato ang slides, ay maglaan ka din ng oras upang isulat ang mga impormasyong nakuha mo sa isang notebook. Sinasabi kasi ng mga eksperto na ito ang pinakamabisang paraan upang matuto ng mas mabilis. Posible na dahil kapag sinusulat mo ito, binabasa mo na din ito, kaya mas lalo mong natatandaan. Number 1, magkaroon ng skills sa pagkuha ng notes. Nabanggit ko nga kanina na may mga hindi makapagsulat ng notes dahil sa sobrang bilis na naglilipat ng kanilang presentation slides ang mga guro o propesor. Isa na rin ang mabilis nilang pagsasalita tungkol sa topic na kanilang dinidiscuss. Kaya naman ay handy ang pagkakaroon ng note-taking skills. Isa na dito ang pagsusulat lamang ng mga keywords para hindi mo na kailanganing isulat ng buong sentence o paragraph. Kung proseso naman ang tinuturo ay maganda kung marunong kang gumawa ng isang flowchart. Maganda din kung isusulat mo ang iyong notes base sa kung paano mo ito naiintindihan upang mas mabilis mo itong ma-absorb. Para naman sa mga visual learners na may photographic memory ay pwede kang mag-drawing sa iyong notes, gumamit ng iba't ibang kulay ng tinta ng ballpen o kaya naman ay mga makukulay na highlighter. Ikaw, alin sa mga itong pinakamabisang
Okay guys, ikaw, ano ba ang pinakamabisang pamamaraan sa iyo pagdating sa pag-aaral mga kaibigan? May iba't ibang kasi tayo guys na na technique pagdating sa pag-aaral. Ngayon, depende sa inyo kung paano ba kayo mag-aaral mabuti guys. No? Depende po sa situation at depende kung paano niyo aralin yung mga bagay-bagay na yan. No? Pero like I said guys, payo ko sa inyo, matulog din kayo guys. No? Huwag naman kayo po sobrang patig. Kapag sobrang patig yan guys, no? Mag-overcrime, yung mga information na pumapasok sa inyo guys, talagang yan, magkakarambol yan. No? At tendency niya, baka ma-mental block pa kayo. Pag na-mental block kayo, during the examination, naku po, sayang po lahat ng pinag-aralan ninyo. Kasi yan guys, the pressure itself, no? Nakaka-pressure kasi pagdating ng board, no? Habang palapit ng board examination, the pressure, no? Alam ko, pressure na kayo guys, no? Pero despite of pressure, meron tinatawag din tayong excitement, no? Na-excite na tayo, mag-e-exam na tayo, na mailalabas na natin guys yung tinatawag nating lahat ng pinag-aralan natin. No? Lahat ng pinag-aralan ninyo, mailalabas yun na. Ibig sabihin niyan guys, hindi lang isang bagay ang pwede natin makuha dito. No? Doon sa binanggit ni Clark TV guys, defense, no, halos lahat siguro ng bagay nagawa niya. Nagawa nyo na guys, pagdating sa pag-aaral. It depends on you how to provide o depends on you how to create ang tinatawag natin na paano nyo siya masasaayos. No? Depende sa inyo mga kaibigan. Okay? Wait lang. Now we proceed guys to arson investigation. Principle for arson investigation. Every fire scene must be approached as a potential and arson fire from the standpoint of preparation, control, search, documentation, and collection of evidence. However, investigator should not prejudge the cause of any fire. Every fire investigation must be treated with the caution and trueness of crime scene until it can be clearly demonstrated that the fire was accidental or natural origin. Ibig sabihin dito guys, sa principle of arson investigator natin o investigation natin, ang ating mga investigator guys, no, hindi kaagad yan nagja-judge kung saan nag-cause of fire. Talaga iniimbestigahan mabuti yan. Hindi pwede nilang sabihin, ito yung cause of fire. No, they conduct a proper investigation regarding the incident happened in the area. The scene must remain in the custody of the fire department from the time of the fire ensure the integrity of the scene and its evidence. The investigator must be willing to examine every fire systematically and truly paying attention to small details. The scene must be sketched and photographed to preserve in appearance for the later court presentation. No? Ito mga process of arson investigation is very important. No? lahat ng detalye, maliit man to guys, napaka-importante pagdating sa arson investigation. Why guys, no? Because if hindi po natin ma-remain yung mga evidence natin at hindi tayo makahanap ng sapat na ebidensya, maaaring makalaya yung arsonist na to, no? Kaya yung mga para investigator insult natin ay talaga nagkakandak po sila na masusing investigasyon regarding the incident happened in the area. Okay? Responsibility of firefighters. Ito po ang mga responsibilidad ng ating mga firefighters. First responder of the fire scene must be familiarized with some aspect of fire investigation and a physical evidence. Should try recognize sign of forced entry such as broken doors, frames, or windows. In best position to detect multiple points of fire origin. Can relate suppression efforts in manner in which the structure is vented. In position to note any unusual flame. Excuse me guys. Color of the smoke, odors, and the weather conditions. This is the responsibility of firefighters that we need to improve, that they need to improve in order to have a proper investigation in arson. No? Kasi kapag ito guys, napabuti nila, o mas napalawak nila yung mga kakayahan nila, the principle nito guys ay mas mapapadali po yung pagkandak ng investigation regarding the incident happened in the area. Minimizing post-fire damage. In the event of suspicious possible intentionally set, firefighters should use extra caution in the suppression, overhaul, and salvage of the fire scene. All these are important but may complicate the scene. Avoid unnecessary damage. Ito guys, minimizing of post-fire damage. Ito yung pwede natin gamitin upang ma-minimize po yung damage to property ng arson na naganap doon sa area. Minimizing post-fire damage, overhaul is done limited to that which is necessary to prevent reoccurrence of fire. While doing overhaul and salvaging activity, they should note unusual order of arrangement. An unauthorized person should not be allowed to enter the scene or the fire scene. Should not allow to removal of items until the investigator has had chance to evaluate them. Parang din to guys sa crime scene investigation natin, no? Scene of the crime operation natin sa police investigation, no? Do not touch, do not alter any evidence that included in the area of the crime scene, no? Bago natin to i-touch, kailangan natin nagkaroon ng proper documentation and proper posture of evidence in the area itself. Kasi guys, kapag nagkataon na pag hindi maayos po ang pag-gather natin ng evidence, that the evidence will be contaminated and will be damaged to the post-fire damage, no? Na lahat po ng mga bagay na ebidensya ay talagang nadadamage at hindi na mapapakinabangan. Tracing the origin of fire and searching for evidence. External outside survey, immediate surroundings. External outside survey, no? Doon sa area, guys. In searching evidence, no? Pwede ka magkaroon ng immediate surrounding, no? Mag-survey ka agad kung ano ba yan, kung ano ba yung pwede mo makita, no? Internal inside survey, enter the building to correlate the same with the outside survey of the structure in question. Kung meron kang mga nakita sa outside, guys, na mga ebidensya, nagkaroon ka ng suspicious idea kung saan ba nagkaroon ng fire o cause of origin of fire. No, pasok ka rin dun sa building, no, guys. Tingnan mo rin sa building, hindi lang sa labas. Pasok ka sa building, kung ano ba yung area, kung ano ba yung pagkakasunog, kung ano ba yung tinatawag natin na set of fire na nangyari dun sa area. Para magkaroon tayo ng overall overview in the area. Okay? Locate the origin of fire. The ceiling area must be checked first. That trace the flow of heat downward. The portion of the room with severe destruction. This is the locate the origin of fire. It's very important to locate the origin of the fire or the cause of the fire itself, guys. Tandaan na po natin, yung cause of fire or the origin of the fire, we need to check it, guys, no? Kasi kung saan po nagsimula yung sunog, doon po natin malalaman, doon po ang fire investigator o fire investigation procedure na nangyayari, ay doon po magsisimula lahat. Okay? Tracing the fire patterns, there are many indicators that the investigator use in reconstructing the path of the fire. But none of them are precise. None of them are foolproof. which means none of them should be relied on to the exclusion of the others. Dito guys, sa tracing of the fire patterns, no? Ito, mayroon pala ako dito guys.
I found this burnt down house, so let's put my forensic science degree to use and teach you about arson investigation. One of the first things that an arson investigator looks for is what's called depth of char, which is this characteristic crocodile skin look. And the closer something is to the flame, the deeper that char is, the farther away, the less char. So that can help indicate where the fire originated. Another thing they'll look for is things that have melted. If you can find something that has melted and you know what it's made out of, you know exactly what temperature that thing had to have endured. The last thing they look for is called protection patterns. So here you can see this beam has no char to it, meaning the fire started on the second floor and worked its way up. In fact, if you look here, you can see this side is completely burnt through versus that side still has some protection patterns. So over here is where the fire was probably more intense, and in fact, right here is where the kitchen is, which is the most likely source of the fire. I want to show you guys how I used to detect accelerants back when I worked in the crime lab. One of the most important parts of fire investigation is the evidence collection. If you can imagine, the very center of the fire is where it's going to be the hottest, which means that's where you're least likely to find any kind of chemicals or accelerants that were used to start the fire. So if a fire investigator finds the burn pattern, they're going to cut out the very edge of that pattern and submit that in a metal can for analysis. Once the lab receives the evidence, the first thing they're going to do is hang a piece of activated charcoal inside that can, and then put it inside an oven to warm it up. What that does is it causes all of the chemicals and accelerants to vaporize and cling to that piece of activated charcoal. Once that happens, they can then wash off the charcoal with a solvent and run that liquid on a GCMS. I worked in the crime lab for 3.5 years and eventually decided to leave that to become a teacher. So I definitely take a lot of my experiences from the crime lab and use that in my science teaching, because I've really found that students really love forensic science and they really love to hear all of the exciting stories from my experience in that time. I worked in the actual lab, so I had a lot of experience with actually analyzing the evidence. So whenever the arson investigators collected things, they would submit it to us, and then it was my job to basically identify what was actually in whatever they collected. I think part of why the video got so much attention was a lot of people were really concerned about how much it's like a junk science. There's a whole slew of concern in forensics right now about how there's been so many like false convictions. There's been a lot of evidence showing how arson investigation in particular has led to false convictions, including examples of people being executed on those false convictions. There is a lot of science that is pretty solid, especially like what I did with like gas chromatography, mass spectrometry. That was some pretty solid stuff, but then ultimately it's the interpretation of that evidence that's where it starts getting a little messy. I got a bachelor's of science in biochemistry and molecular biology, and then ultimately went to grad school to get a master's degree in forensic science. And then I happened to get a job in the crime lab here in my hometown, and so it just worked out. Ultimately, yeah, I just knew that I love science. I love working with kids. I wanted to try to, instead of maybe like putting people in jail, kind of like switch my philosophy to like helping be supportive of people before they get to that point in their life, you know. So I wanted to be more of like a preventative kind of person, and teaching science, it just seemed like the perfect mesh, and I've been loving it. I try to include as much as possible is spreading positivity and curiosity through science and jokes.
Guys, so narinig natin yung false policy accuses, no? Yung policy na tinatawag natin, no? Kung hindi natin pagdating sa fire investigation, guys, no? Kung ikaw hindi expert regarding that matter, guys, talagang magkakaroon ng false accusation na tinatawag natin, no? And this will be na talagang makakasira ng buhay regarding that matter. Kaya yung mga nagkakandak diyan, guys, ng fire investigation process, karaniwang matataas talagang pinag-aralan. Talagang mataas talaga yung kalidad pagdating sa pag-iimbestiga, no, dun sa area, no. Yeah, guys, none of them are foolproof, which means none of them should be relied on the exclusion of others. Ibig sabihin, guys, the indicator o reconstructing path kung saan po yung pattern, kung saan nagsimula yung pattern to, nabanggit ko sa video, depende po kung merong kasing area daw na malakas ang apoy, merong area na mahina ang apoy. Depende kung saan yung pattern na yun. The most accurate origin determination are accomplished by applying numbers of different indicators independently and combining the result of a series of overlays. Dami, guys, so sa number of the origin, dito nagsimula tapos dumami pa ng dumami. Ibig sabihin, you need to identify all the fire origin of fire. so that we can identify accurately kung saan ba talaga nagsimula yung fire na tinatawag po natin. Question guys, it is the very place where the first material was ignite. It is also the place where the ignition source could be obtained. A. V pattern, B. Inverted V pattern, C. Point of origin, or D. Heaviest damage part of the building. The answer for this is point of origin. Kung saan po nagsimula yung first material was ignited. Point of origin. Point of origin, mga kaibigan, is the very place where the first material was ignited. It also the place where the ignition source could be pointed or obtained. It is the wetted where the pot of gold could be located, evidence, no? Sift carefully the ashes to find the traces of the device which started the fire. If the device is a candle, the wick and the wax of such may be recovered. On the light bulb, the heat distorted the bulb is the direction of the heat. Kung ito po ay kandila, no, lalo-lalo na guys, kung ito ay pinagsimulan, yung mga wax na natira, pwede po nating point of origin kung saan po nagsimula o nag-ignite yung fire na tinatawag natin. Karaniwan po na gumagamit ang kandila, yung mga informant settler natin, di ba? Karaniwan ginagamit nila, lalo na pag wala silang kuryente. Yan yung ginagamit nila. And karaniwan pag brownout din, no? Yan po yung mga point of origin na pwede nating paggamitan o pwede nating malaman kung saan ba nagsimula yung sunog na tinatawag natin. Okay? Search patterns, mga kaibigan. Before beginning the actual search for evidence, examine the exterior of the structure from all sides, no? From outside and interior structure of the building, we need to have a search pattern. Kailangan po natin makita yung mga pattern. Kung saan po ba o kung ano ba yung area na sunog, kung ano ba yung area doon sa video, di ba? Pinakita kung saan ba yung lakas, kung saan ba area malakas yung sunog, kung saan ba yung area na mahina yung sunog, depende. This allow the investigator an idea to fall. Limit of the fire damage, the areas of heaviest damage, possibilities of external source of ignition or possible force of entry. Guys, ito yung mga idea na investigator na talagang makikita niya kagad because of the search pattern. Exterior areas count, exterior areas, guys. Obviously, forcible entry. Kung doon sa exterior, guys, no, nagkaroon ng forcible entry, no, talagang pinilit pumasok para makapagsunog. Show and tire expression that do not belong to the fire and police personnel or their vehicle. Doon sa exterior natin, guys, no, nakita tayo ng mga set of shoes o yung mga bakat ng mga sapatos, lalo ng mga sasakyan na hindi kabilang doon sa mga nagresponde sa area. We consider that an exterior areas, no? We consider as an evidence in the area. Okay? Discarded tools from forcible entry, yung mga ginamit na mga materyales upang magkaroon ng forcible entry. Fuel containers, beer, soft drinks containers, yan. Matchbox, shard of glass from windows, other items which might be used an incendiary device. Other items which could be left by the perpetrator. Ano pa yung mga materyales na naiwan ng mga perpetrator natin doon sa area. Exterior areas yan. If an explosion preceded or accompanied the fire, such as the Glorieta incident, guys, no? Naalala ba natin yung Glorieta incident? Exterior research will focus in fragments of the structure of explosive device. These fragments of a trajectory are reconstructed to establish a set of explosion. Location and distribution of fragments be carefully charted on the crime scene sketch. Grabe yung nangyari din sa Glorieta incident case, no? Talagang malaki yung pagsabok na nangyari din. Marami din casualties yung nangyari doon because of the explosion. Okay? Anything that looks out of place should be charted on the fire, scene sketch, photograph in place, and then be collected properly. All collected objects should be considered a potential sources of latent fingerprints and therefore must not be handled by more than one person and packaged to minimize damage and contamination by other handling them. This simply means that the chain of custody must be established. Okay? Dito guys sa ating mga ebidensya, no? To avoid any contamination of evidence, dapat iisa lang po ang nag-handle ng ating ebidensya. Since this is a fire investigation or fire arson investigation, we need to avoid any contamination of evidence. Kasi guys, like I said, sunog na nga yung ebidensya natin, tapos magkakontaminate mo pa, eh wala na po tayong makikita dun sa ating evidence na nakakuha dun sa area. Kung meron tayong exterior, also meron din tayong interior building guys. Remember, photograph all areas of the structure before disturbing it. Lahat po ng mga bagay o lahat po ng bagay na nakita natin, kailangan po meron tayong proper documentation, especially in photographing the area. No? So that we can see in the presentation of a court proceeding o magkaroon man ng tinatawag natin the court presentation in the area, eh talagang mapapakita natin kung ano ba yung nangyari dun sa area guys. Look for sign of attempted forced entry such as tool mark, fresh damage to the door or window, frames, broken locks, or broken windows. A possible entry from the outside in the interior entry in the building. Alamin po natin kung ano ba yung mga possible entry o forcible entry na ginamit ng mga kriminal na yan. Sign of prior efforts to extinguishing fire. Empty fire extinguisher. If so, find the individual responsible. They are valuable eyewitness about early stage of the fire. Ayan, mga signs na ito yung mga senyales na nagkaroon ng tinatawag nating efforts in extinguishing fire, no? Kung ano ba yung mga ginawa dun sa area. Interior mga kaibigan. Start with the area with the least damage and progresses toward the most heavily damaged. Working the fire scene means tracing the flow of the fire back to its origin and cause. To look for what material was first ignited, the source of heat that ignited it. Sa interior guys, kung ano ba yung mga materials na ginamit upang yung mga accelerants, plants, and trailers na ginamit yan para magkaroon ng ignition na tinatawag, para magkaroon ng heat and that ignited it. Ito yung nagsimula ng apoy. Yan. Makikita po natin dito yan, sa interior. Fire behavior indicators guys. Indicators can be used reconstructing the path of the fire. Note, none of them are precise. The most accurate origin determination are accomplished by applying a number of different indicators independently and then combining the result as a series of overlays. Kailangan po sa fire behavior indicators natin, hindi lang po tayo magbabase sa isang bagay. Ibig sabihin po, lahat ng point of origin na pwede natin makita o behavior in the area of the responsibility of the area that incident happened itself. Yan, yun yung tinatawag nating overlays. Kailangan po natin makita bawat area. Yung number of the different indicators na pwede po natin magamit as evidence in the court. Okay? Burn patterns mga kaibigan. This can be used to indicate the direction of fire spread on the structural elements, non-structural, and furnishing. Yung burn pattern po natin, dito po natin makikita, excuse me, kung ano po yung mga area, kung anong pattern po, kung saan ba malakas ang apoy, kung saan ba nagsimula ang apoy, no? Dito rin guys, sa burn pattern, malalaman natin yung point of origin na tinatawag natin. V pattern or conical pattern, result of the upward travel of the fire. Upward, pataas guys, V pattern. Diba, nakita natin sa mga unang discussion, pataas, tapos magkakaroon ng conduction, convection, no, sa area, na kung saan kumakalat yun. Diba? Each shape depends on the size of the fire with respect to the ceiling that tends to flatten and spread horizontally. Ibig sabihin guys, in a vertical pattern, a V-shaped pattern, or the pattern itself, a conical pattern, kasi parang cone, di ba? Cone na yung sa ice cream, pag ganun. Ngayon, depende po kung gaano kataas yung ceiling. Depende rin po sa size ng ceiling natin yan, guys. And depends, and yung spreading, the horizontally, vertically, depende kung gaano kalawak din yung area, kung ano ba yung nasunog. The ceiling directly above a fuel package may exhibit a circular pattern damage unless bounded by walls. No? Makikita po natin sa ceiling natin yung damage ng apoy na nangyari. Di ba sa video kanina talagang tataas din? Tapos yung usok kumalat, nagkaroon ng tinatawag natin convection, conduction in the area. Di ba? V pattern. Accordingly, the more vertical the side of the V, the faster the initial fire. So, ibig sabihin, the more na mas mataas yung V pattern natin, the fire itself is mas madaling kumalat. The faster, guys. The nature of any wall covering, the size of the fuel package, height of the ceiling, the condition of the ventilation have more effect on the shape of the pattern. Yung mga ventilation package natin doon sa area natin, guys, no? Nakaka-epekto po sa V-pattern kung ano po yung ventilation na ginamit natin doon sa area ng isang building. Inverted pattern o inverted V pattern. With the presence of a small fire or limited duration, will typically display a triangular or inverted V pattern or damage to nearby adjoining wall. If the wall covering a IOS very combustible, the flame travel can be almost vertical. Even if the wall covering destroyed the V pattern is often reflected in the remaining structural member. Ibig sabihin po sa V pattern o inverted V pattern, parang kabaliktaran to eh. No? Inverted, ibig sabihin yung yung duration of triangular inverted V pattern natin. Kabaliktaran, parang siyang sa V pattern, pag ganun, inverted, pwedeng pag ganun. Diba? Depende po sa the flame it started. Para mas madali natin maintindihan, guys, no? We have here. Buti na lang, meron akong internet, guys. Ito yung gusto ko mapakita kasi sa inyo, guys, no? Kasi ito yung wala kasing internet dito sa natin eh. Dito sa pinagpunuan. And yung hirap pag ganun, guys, naman. Iba yata lumalabas dito, mga kaibigan. Ang dami rin ng guys, no? Marami rin talaga pagdating sa fire arson investigation o fire arson incident investigation. Talagang maraming mga witness o maraming mga expert regarding this matter. Okay. Ano yung B pattern na hinahanap? Ito guys, tingnan natin to. Grabe, di ba, mga kaibigan? Yan po yung tinatawag natin mga pattern kanina.
Hi, I'm Dan Madrikowski. UL FSRI has been studying how changes in fuel materials and ventilation affect the development of fire damage patterns in residential fires. Understanding fire dynamics is essential to analyzing fire damage patterns and identifying a fire's area of origin based on the scientific method. Fire dynamics depend on the relationship of fuel, heat, and ventilation during a fire event. A change in ventilation, something as simple as a door left open by an occupant fleeing the fire, or an open window remote from the fire, or a window that fails as a result of fire growth, could greatly impact the fire damage inside the structure. To aid fire investigators in recognizing and explaining the impact of ventilation on fire damage patterns in residential structures, ULFSRI has developed an online course, Impact of Ventilation on Fire Damage Patterns. This course includes a review of fire dynamics in structures that address ventilation-limited fires and why they are so prevalent. Presentations of large-scale experiments are also included to demonstrate how differences in fixed ventilation result in changes to the fire damage patterns within the furnished structures. The repeatability of the fire conditions and the resulting damage based on ventilation will also be presented. To support materials presented in NFPA 921, Guide for Fire and Explosion Investigations, this free online class uses video and infrared images to demonstrate compartment fire phenomena, fire spread between compartments, and the development of pre- and post-flashover fire damage patterns. Understanding how the patterns evolve as the fire grows may help you determine the area of origin and make the right call. I encourage you to head to the ULFSRI Fire Safety.
I-reach na tayo guys, no? Inaano niya tayo. Okay. Wait, guys. Nanap ko yung V pattern na yung makikita. Napakaganda ng course na yan guys, no? In terms na kung gusto nyo pumasok sa Bureau of Fire Protection, yan yung mga course na pwede nyo kunin o pwede nyo pag-aralan talaga guys. Buha tayo ng mga sample video.
Shopee fam, payday na!
Po.
Kaya,
Papasko na
i-check
mga
out
kaibigan.
ko na yan.
Ayan na si Jose Maricel.
Minnesota suffered more than 14,000 fires last year, totaling more than $223 million in damage.
Even worse, those fires claimed 57 lives, up significantly from the previous year. But to find out why those fires started and how to prevent them, investigators need to pick through the debris and answer important questions like how did the fire start and where? As WCCO's Bill Hudson shows us, the State Fire Marshal's Office wants to ensure more investigators are up to the job.
From the insignificant to catastrophic, every fire has a story. Probing the forensics of fire is the job of trained investigators.
Some signs point that it could be smoking.
Problem is, the state fire marshal has only 11 certified investigators covering the entire state.
We can't physically make it to every single fire.
Chief Deputy State Fire Marshal Jim Smith says that means most fires get investigated by local departments. So they've created this school to teach them how.
It's become quite apparent that we need people at the local level who know how to conduct an investigation.
After staging different types of fires in this abandoned house, firefighters from departments large and small will go to work.
What did you see when you pulled up?
They'll have to interview those involved, analyze burn patterns, and take samples. This appears to be a simple cigarette in the couch, but first impressions aren't always right.
Just like anything else in life, sometimes it appears to be this, but it ends up being something else. And that's what we're trying to teach them here.
Scott Widstrom is from Ramsey Fire. Travis Wood is chief of Dalbo's volunteer department.
Should we take a photo of that outlet?
Their team probes the scene and interviews witnesses.
Best way to stay out of trouble is to be 100% honest, okay?
Then they'll spot the alligator charring on the wood studs. It's a roadmap to where the fire burned hottest.
We're thinking that, or at least the first hypothesis, is that the fire originated here on the sofa somewhere.
But samples later reveal an accelerant, and it will prove to be arson. Meantime, others probe accidental fires like overheated hot plates or space heaters. A hands-on classroom to earn expertise and certification, picking through charred rubble to learn what really happened.
We have to take all of the stories and put them together and come up to a totality of the truth.
Bill said.
Grabe guys, no? Kung mapapansin po natin yung mga pinag-aralan po dito ng mga fire investigator natin o fire arson investigator natin, talagang matindi. Hindi lang siya basta-basta guys. Kaya dapat, in terms of the Bureau of Fire Protection talaga natin guys, no? Kung mapapansin po natin, ay talagang pinapatindi nila din po ang kampanya nila para pagdating dito sa ating mga fire. Especially kapag ito ay Fire Prevention Month, no? Talagang pinapatindi po ang kampanya. Okay? Beveling or effect. The formation of the sloping edge slant burn that is more pronounced on the side facing the oncoming fire. Useful in establishing the direction of burn through floors. It helps in determining whether the floor has been burned from underneath or from the top. Yung beveling effect natin o beveling effect is sloping edge, no? Formation of a sloping edge, no? It depends on the upward or the downward na tinasabi natin from top to the bottom. Depende po yan sa beveling effect natin. Other indicators guys, heat level, smoke level. Sa heat level, the height of the significant levels the heat in arson revealed by the charring, burning, blistering, or discoloration of paint or wall ceilings. Smoke levels, guys, the height of which smoke level which change a position of ventilation and therefore may be useful in estimating what doors and windows are open during the fire. Useful in assessing the cause of the fire, death. Heat level and smoke level. Sa heat level, guys, makikita po natin ang level depende sa apoy na nangyayari dun sa area. Doon sa smoke level, guys, no, napag-aralan po natin yung mga different type of the color of the smoke and different type of the color of the fire or the flame itself. Nakikita po natin, yan po ang indicator kung paano ba natin ma-access o paano ba ma-access ng fire arson o fire BFP personnel yung area nila. Low burn and penetration as an indicator. The lowest point in a structure must always be examined carefully, for it may bear evidence of the cause of the fire as well as its origin. In the normal fuel load, fire usually moves vertically upward, leaving the floors and lower reaches of the walls much less damaged. When the floors of the lower ground is severely damaged, it means high temperature or were being produced at the floor level. Possibly the cause of the such lows burns is the ignition of pool of flammable liquid on the floor. Ibig sabihin, guys, dito sa low burn and penetration indicator po natin, makikita po natin kung gaano kataas o gaano kalakas ang apoy doon sa area ng sunog, no. Depende po sa kung ito ay makahoy, no, talagang mabilis ang pagkalat ng sunog na tinatawag natin, guys, no. Mabilis po ang pagkalat niyan. Using flammable liquid to start a fire produce effect that are most characteristic if a room has not gone to flash over. Kung ang ating mga flammable liquid ay ginamit po pag sa start ng ating mga fire na tinatawag, guys, ay talagang flash over ang pwedeng mangyari dyan. Especially with low volatile fuels, gasoline, kerosene, and paint thinner. The radiant flames from this fuel produce a more pronounced charring on the floor surface surrounding the liquid pool, producing a halo or ring damage. Very volatile fuels, guys, acetone and alcohol, etc. Quickly flash a non-porous surface, providing a short-lived flames and produce a minimal surface of scorching. Dito sa ating arson investigation, the low volatile fuels, ito po, guys, ay mas madalis lalo na may liquid na madaling masunog, guys, no. Ito ay talagang magsisilbi o mas yung damage na mangyayari dun sa area, guys, is matindi. Yung chart of depth, yung nabanggit sa video, guys, no, kanina, yung chart of depth kung gaano kalalim o gaano yung pinsala na nangyayari dun sa area, no. Makikita sa chart of depth yung mga, 'di ba, yung mga talagang uling na nangyayari doon. The depth which pyrolysis action has converted an organic material to its volatile fraction and charcoal. Ibig sabihin, naging charcoal na yung mga kahoy, no, guys? The higher the intensity, the faster the charring, and the deeper the resulting char. The higher the fire density or the volume, the density of fire na nangyari doon sa area, mas maitim po yung nagiging result ng char of death natin. It cannot be used to establish a precise time of fire, but it can be used and applied systematically to assist relatively para exposure throughout the structure. Ito po, makakatulong po ito sa yung char of death kung gaano kalatindi yung apoy na nangyari doon sa area of responsibility ng Bureau of Fire Protection personnel natin. Yan, guys, line of the demarcation in wood section. Depth of char is used for evaluating fire spread, kung gaano kabilis kung gaano kabilis yung apoy na lumaganap. Is used to estimate the duration of fire. The rate of charring of the woods varies widely, no? Kung gaano katagal yung duration of fire dun sa area, no? Makikita po sa sa depth of char o the char of depth ng ating woods. Ito, for example, guys, char layer. Ito yung char of depth natin. Meron pang natira, ibig sabihin, meron pa ito yung normal width, pyrolysis zone base, pyrolysis zone. Okay? Glass, guys, has some properties that make it very valuable indicator for the use of the investigation. Although it appears as a solid, it is a packed super cooled liquid. As a result, were you exposed to stress, It is elastic and will actually bend to a substantial degree before breaking. Stress as referred may be mechanical or thermal. With the presence of soot, char, or deposit of the broken edge, meron ba dito yan? With the broken edge, one can tell a breakage occurred before the or after fire. Its location in the fire debris of utmost important in interpreting in evidentiary information. With the presence of soot, char, or deposit on the broken edges, one can tell a breakage occur before or after fire. Its location in the fire debris or utmost important is interpreting in evidentiary information. In the glass indicator natin guys, lalong-lalo na sa mga bulb, sa mga ilaw, di ba? Sa sobrang overheat na yan guys, talagang yan, magiging cause din ng point of origin of fire. Yan guys. Blowout of light bulb faces the oncoming flames and indicates direction of the fire of travel. Yan. Dito natin malalaman guys kung yung point of origin ba ay nagsimula rin dun sa bulb na yan, light bulb natin, sa glass na tinatawag natin. Ito guys, thermal effect of the material, full bulb. Yan guys. Yan, ito yung origin of fire dito na guys. So, tingnan mo, di ba lumobo siya? Sabihin nag-overheat. The gases inside the bulb expanded were heated by fire. The bulb glass softened by heat, pulled toward the heat source gas pressure built in a sought the weakest hottest point on the bulb surface. The bulb may break at the apex of the pull if the gas pressure becomes greaten enough. The pull often points to the area of origin. Ito, origin of fire. Diba? Yan guys, dito nagsimula yung apoy. Ibig sabihin, ito yung pinagsimulan of point of origin ng fire na tinatawag natin. Look for prima facie evidence of arson guys. Entering the building, the investigator. Yung oras ba ako? Haba kasi nito. Haba kasi ng fire arson investigation guys, no? Talagang look for prima facie evidence of arson. Entering the building, the investigator should observe the following. Upon the entering the building, guys, meron dapat talagang i-observe ang ating mga investigator. Look marked on the doors and windows not burned off, possible indication of forcible entry. Notice tools used for forcible entry. Notice unusual arrangement of the building's content. The stock of substitution. New expensive stock have been removed or substitute by the second hand of this old stock. Ito po yung mga prima facie evidence na pwede natin gamitin as an arson investigator conducted an investigation process itself. Diba? Yan po yung mga pwede niyang gamitin. Yan guys, nandito na tayo sa documentation of the scene. Photographing the fire scene guys. Used to support the observation, opinion, and conclusion and the investigation which to make as the cause of the fire. Provide evidence which would counteract arguments of alternative causes of the fire, which might be suggested as a later date. Provides a pictorial representation or a presentation which is easily understood and evaluated, properly marked. A plan should also be made showing the view of angles of each photograph or alternatively, the photograph in a sequence for the readers to determine the view angle of each one. In photographing the crime scene is very important guys, no? Kasi photographing is the one of the key element of vital record that we can use in the presentation of the court proceeding. Ngayon guys, in order to have a proper documentation or proper photographing of the crime scene itself in the fire scene investigation, we need to have a angle, no? Kailangan po maganda yung pagkakakuha natin yan. We need a proper angle in terms of that matter in photographing crime scene. Meron yung proper angle, di ba? As a tool in arson investigation, photography is an effective tool in recording and preserving the evidence of the said fire. Not only in arson investigation itself, guys, but also in other similar event na meron po police operation, di ba? Sa mga murder cases natin, we can use a vital record po ang ating effective tool in recording the photographing itself. It also proved the intent to commit arson. As much as practicable at the onset of the scene of the fire, recovery whether or not arson is suspected before any disturbance is made to the area, effort should be exerted to take photographs, no? Upon na ikaw ay nakarating sa area of responsibility or area of fire scene investigation proceeding na nagsisimula na, kailangan po meron tayong effective tool na recording process. Yan po yung tinatawag nating photography. Meron tayong photography na courses, di ba? Na subject area, di ba? Photograph in arson investigation, mga kaibigan. Show the area in which the fire started or was set. Help identify spectators. Arsonists might remain at the scene. Ayan guys, no? Lalo-lalo mga nakikita na picture nyo yung area guys, no? Surroundings natin. Kasi minsan may tawa na tawa dyan. We considered as a suspect in the area. Kung ano ba yung nangyari dun. Provide information about the speed of combustion and direction of spreading. Show the progressive stages of burning, firefighting from various angles. As much as possible, record the time in it was taken. Sa magadaling salita, as much as possible guys, kailangan nating i-record kung anong oras, anong araw tayo dumating doon sa area of responsibility o area of fire scene as been done. Kailangan kasi, pagdating sa technical writing report, no? Pagdating sa paggawa ng report, talagang i-included natin yan. Papasok dyan si 5W and 1H natin, mga kaibigan. Help the investigator determine the type of materials burning, color and quantity of smoke and flames. Given particular attention to the most burned charred areas, all sides of the destruction should be photographed to show damage area. Lahat po na angles na pwede nating i-photograph, lalo-lalo na may mga depth or chart, kung saan po na yung area na mas malaki yung sunog o mas malawak yung pagkalalo ng depth of chart. Talagang kailangan nating i-provide o kailangan nating i-photograph so that we can preserve a recording, no? A vital record in the presentation of the court. And also, the color and quantity of smoke and flames. We need to identify or we need to have a proper photographing of that matter so that malalaman natin kung ano ba yung mga combustible materials, kung bakit nagsimula o kung bakit ano yung dahilan ng pagkasunog ng area. Exterior scene photograph is show the nature and material construction and the location of the doors, window, chimneys, ventilation shaft, electricity fuse box, and gas meter. So, exterior scene photograph, we need to photograph also. Hindi lang sa loob, kundi sa labas din, mga kaibigan. Exterior scene, from all sides or at least two opposite corners of the building to show overall damage and location of the entrance and windows. The location of the building to the neighboring buildings of the firefighting access areas. Any object which may be made be material to the circumstances of the fire. Types of the tracks of footprints, location, the explosion, debris, and close details as well as the from distance. Exterior scene natin guys, we need to have a proper photographing of evidence in terms of that matter so that we can provide proper documentation or proper distinguish between the interior and the exterior scene. Okay? Yan, interior guys. All room and areas inside the building affected by the fire. Presented sequentially from least damage to the areas of the greater damage or to the point of origin if this is not the greatest damage. Ibig sabihin dito guys, doon sa area na konti yung damage tapos doon sa area na maraming damage, kailangan nating magkaroon ng proper photographing of evidence, no? Para magkaroon ng comparison itself. The peripheral or secondary areas where the fire had not been originated. The area of the fire origin should be photographed before the commencing excavation and after if the process yielded point of interest. At the areas where accelerant is suspected, the areas of the localized damage to the floor and as well as overhead damage. Yan yung mga ano natin guys, kailangan nating alamin sa interior scene. Appliances suspected of causing the fire should be photographed from the distant and close up in their location. Close up view or close up photographing of evidence. Points of origin entry with the testimony of firefighters as basis. On doors, the door should be first photographed in the position in which they are found. If it's closed, both sides should be photographed. No? Ibig sabihin guys, from the outside and the inside of the door, we need to photograph so that we because these are the first photograph that we need to conducted so that if there's any possible entry na nangyari sa area, no, malalaman kaagad yan. The burn pattern and soot they deposit around the door and the door frame. Any parts of the door or lock which may have been dislodged are a result of some type of forced entry should be photographed at the location where they're found and later reconstructed at their original position. It's very important, the points of entry. We need to identify, or we need to have a photograph of evidence of that matter. On windows, mga kaibigan, the position at the time of the fire be determined and the evidence used for such evaluation should be photographed. Not only the doors but also the windows. We need to have a proper photograph of evidence. The position of the window frames in the case of sliding aluminum windows, no? Makikita po kasi the point of origin, no? Kung saan na nagsimula yung sunog, no? Depende kung ito ay talagang sa windows natin medyo sa loob medyo apoy-apoy na talaga, o medyo pakat na yung mga itim na usok o mga itim na naiwan dun sa smoke area. Makikita po yan. The position of the failing glass could be indicate the position of the window at the time of the fire. No? Doon po makikita natin yan. The smoke and heat pattern above a window can also indicate the position of the window at the time of the fire. The window lock should be recovered and photographed. Ito guys, mga sample natin. Classic D, door opens during fire yan. Ito, during the fire, naka-open siya guys. Sabihin niya, indicator po yan na ito talaga nasunog. No thermal damage, door closed during the fire. Ito, nakasarado to. Note, classic slope towards point origin, creating a V-shape. Yan guys. V-shape, pataas. Inverted, pababa. Door open during a fire. You can correct me guys, no, kung meron kayong mga tanong guys. Kasi minsan, may mga nasasabi ako na hindi tugma dun sa ating no? Very open to any suggestion, a comment, no? Madali, mas maganda yung kung nagko-comment kayo mga kaibigan. Yan, inverted cone pattern. Ito yung inverted cone pattern. Pababa guys. Ignitable liquid was poured across the floor. Indicators of possible incendiary fire guys. Yan, ito yung ating rubber gasket burn away. Talagang na heavy inverted cone pattern. Ito guys, ibig sabihin sirato pala, sirato. Ito yung heavy inverted cone pattern natin. Incendiary fire is a disgruntled or disgruntled employee poured a gasoline on some heavy rubber matting on the floor in the front of the Bay Mary refrigeration unit. Ibig sabihin, ito yung mga indicators kung saan ba nagsimula yung apoy na tinatawag natin. Yan guys, head, ito yung ulo, the arm, the torso, the arm, the legs, no? Ito yung guys kung ito protected area surface body. Ibig sabihin guys, ito tinanggal na kasi yung bangkay dito, the corpus delicti itself. No? Ito dito nagsusunog na kasi. Hindi na nilagay, baka masailan sa mga batang nanonood mga kaibigan. Oh, yan, arm. Ito guys. Mga indicator, no? Mga naiwang bakas dun sa area. At not also guys, no? Hindi ko sinabi tinanggal. Ibig sabihin, possible, and the possible is naging ashes na. Naging abo na. Diba? Pwedeng maging ganun bagay na. Pwedeng maging ganun guys. It's either tinanggal o naging abo yung bangkay. Clean burn. Clean burn as areas where soot burn away. Ito guys. Ito may mga indicator na mayroong mga area na hindi talaga nasunog, no? This is the base Bay Mary refrigeration. Ito guys, no? Bay Mary pala yung ibig sabihin niyan. Refrigeration unit from an incendiary fire in a bar. Gasoline was poured on the floor in the front of the unit on the heavy rubber matting. Ito guys. Ibig sabihin nakasarado yung guys yung Sarado ba? Tama ba? Okay. Heavy soot pattern on the stainless base. This was the only appliance at the scene to have these soot deposit patterns. Clean burn. Napakahirap na yung arson investigation para sa akin guys. Ewan ko sa inyo kung madali sa inyo. Rundown burn patterns guys. Ito. Rundown burn patterns on joints beneath floor where an ignitable liquid was poured. Yan. Burn, up, the burn, unburn, burn, unburn, burn, unburn. No? Ibig sabihin, rundown burn pattern po ang tawag dyan. Yan. Ignitable liquid pouring pattern. See summary below for evidence that this pattern resulted from burning on an ignitable liquid and not from the flashover damage. Yes, nakikita natin. Light burn pattern, unburn pattern, or unburn, linear, threshold burn, guys, sample taken, splash patterns, comparison sample taken here, localized gapping of a liquid linoleum, threshold burn, sample taken, yan. Yeah. Ito yung mga pwede natin gamitin as evidence in the court. Effect of oxidation on the metals, thermal effect of the materials. Ito naman guys, kapag ito ay nangyari sa oxidation o the fire itself, pagdating sa mga metals. No? Gray oxide, ito yung mga area. Excuse me. Inverted cone pattern from ignitable liquid burning at the base of the refrigerator. Ito yung mga inverted cone pattern natin mga kaibigan. Effects of the oxidation of metals o rush. Ito guys. Rust. Ito guys, kanina pinakita. No? Yung point of origin, the full bulb. No? Because of the overheating. The origin of fire. No? So, dito sumabog. Ito yung naging cause of fire na tinatawag natin. Example of thermal effects of material calcination and pigment. Thermal effect of materials guys. Heavy calcination and flame movement o pigment. Ito guys. Sample picture natin. Fire started inside closets. Lowered doors and removed. Soot plume. Example thermal effect of material pour pattern. Effects of a carpet guys. Thermal effect of materials. Ito. Unignitable liquid was poured on the rug and soaked into the rug in the forest court and the vacuum of the rug. Ibig sabihin, yung mga liquid, no? Cider gas or kerosene o mga kung ano ba yung liquid na ginawa dyan para mag-cause of fire, dito ginamit. The ignitable liquid also leaked through the padding. Photos show that the carpet section cut out and pulled back to reveal the scorching. Example of thermal effect of the material pour pattern, effect of the linoleum. Kanina, parang ito rin yung sample kanina guys. Example of thermal effect on the material smoke and soot condensation. Thermal effect of the materials guys. Green bracketed area is smoke and soot condensation. This area was close to the point of origin and smoldering chatter. Ibig sabihin, sarado tong area na to guys. Kaya yung smoke na nangyayari, yan yung resulta ng ating thermal effect of materials. Wait lang. Okay, so I have sample picture here guys. Alam nyo ba guys, ang aso ginagamit din not only detecting bomb but also in a fire arson investigation. This is a sample video guys.
Like a typical dog, Emily enjoys love and attention. One of her favorite places to get both is the fire station. But Emily isn't a typical dog, and she's not at the station just to visit.
You ready to work?
Emily is at work. She is San Diego's first ATF-trained arson dog.
I guess a proper term would be an accelerant detection canine.
See.
What she can do, no machine can do. No piece of equipment can do it. No human can do it.
See. See.
Good girl.
What she can do is sniff out causes of arson fire when accelerants like gasoline, kerosene, diesel fuels, or lighter fluids are used.
Emily can smell very, 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 very small amounts. And today we're training with one drop. She can smell things or accelerants far lower than that.
Good girl.
Emily and her two-legged handler, San Diego fire engineer and arson investigator James Shadone, are members of the Metro Arson Strike Team, or MAST, which includes San Diego Fire, San Diego Police, and 2 federal law enforcement agencies.
We have a very high amount of arsons, And having an arson dog only complements what we do. She will locate accelerants. So anything that's a flammable liquid or it can be used to excel a fire or poured on a fire to make the fire grow, Emily will be able to alert and detect it.
Good girl, Emily.
She could tell me that day or that night of that fire. Where with a crime lab, sometimes it's months later, 6 months later, sometimes even longer.
Having Emily on scene, you almost get an automatic read on is there accelerant used in the fire, which of course helps us to determine if it was arson or not. And it saves us an enormous amount of time.
Emily is a food reward canine, originally trained by the ATF.
When she does what she's supposed to do, when she alerts, she will be fed. That's her reward system. She is getting literally over 100 alerts a day, or feedings a day, that repetition, one after another, after another, after another.
Emily is one of 2 arson dogs in California. Because of her specialized training, she and Shadone are members of the National Response Team.
She can work anywhere in the nation. She can get called out anywhere, at any time.
Show me. Show me.
Though she's a little more work than a human partner would be, Shadone wouldn't have it any other way.
Emily is beyond worth it. It takes a ton of my time, and I'm adjusting to that. That's fine. My family and I were adjusting to it. She is worth every penny of it, both as my partner, both as a resource for the San Diego Fire Department, as a resource for all local departments, San Diego Police Department, ATF cases, and anyone in the United States for that matter.
Oh, you silly girl.
Okay guys, nakita nyo naman, no? Fire is also, dog is used to also in terms of the fire arson investigation. We use a dog, no? Not only in bombing incident, but also in the fire arson investigation, no? Dito sa Pilipinas, ewan ko kung meron tayong dog na nagta-conduct for arson investigation itself. Okay? Smoke marks, mga kaibigan. An experienced investigation will determine the volume of smoke involved at the fire and the character and the residue is deposited on the walls of elsewhere. Smoke marks have often been of assistance in determining the possibility of a fire having more than one place of origin. Guys, dito sa smoke, no, nasabi ko kanina sa inyo mga kaibigan, yung tinatawag natin different of type of smoke. No? Depende kung makikita po natin, lalong-lalo na mga eksperyensyadong mga fire arson investigator, alam na alam po nila kung saan o kung ano yung madedetermine kaagad nila mga kaibigan. Kung ano yung kung ano yung combustible material na naganap doon sa smoke because of the smoke marks doon sa indicator na kaagad yan guys. Malalaman kaagad yan guys ng fire arson investigator itself. The size of fire of magnitude mga kaibigan, this is important when correlated with the time of alarm, the time received and the time of the arrival of the first respondent or the first fire apparatus. Fire makes what might be termed on normal progress. Such as progress can be estimated after the examination of the material, burn the building and the normal ventilation offered to the fire. The time element and the degree of the headway must be by the way of the flames become important factors to determine possible incendiary scene. Okay? The size of the fire, of the magnitude of the fire, we can determine. It depends kung gaano kalakas o gaano katindi yung apoy na nangyari doon sa loob. Not only in loob but also in the labas, no? Makikita po dyan. Direction of the travel. While it admitted that no two fire burn in the identical fashions, yet it can be shown that a fire make normal progress through various type of the building, no? Dito sa direction of the travel guys, no, hindi lang po iisang direksyon yung fire natin. Kung nakita po natin sa video, hindi lang siya isang direksyon, no. Marami siyang point of origin na pwedeng maganap, no. Ibig sabihin, direction of the fire, it's either in the indoor or outdoor, no. Magkaiba po sa indoor, magkaiba rin sa outdoor. Kung sa indoor to naganap, the oxygen itself, no, yung hangin na pumapasok doon, kakaunti. So, it means, pwedeng kakaunti lang din yung point of origin natin. Pero pag doon po sa outside nangyari, no? Kung matatandaan po natin, meron po tayong tinatawag na forest fire, no? Talagang isang buwan bago maapulo yung sunog, no? It's a part of the United States of America or the Canadian state. Guys, no? Kung maaalala po natin yung direction of the travel of the fire itself, guys, no? Depends on the velocity, no? Kung ito malakas ang hangin masyado, talagang maapektuhan din yung iba, no? Para pagdating din sa mga bahay, no, guys, no? Kung for example, this is point A, sa A, nagkaroon po ng burning doon sa area, maapektuhan lang din po yung pangalawang bahay na yun because of the travel of the air. Okay? Considering the type of construction, the building materials, combustibility, of contained channel of the ventilation and circumstances surrounding the sending of alarm, ang experienced investigator can be determine whether a fire has spread abnormally fast. No? Malalaman kaagad yan, guys, because of the direction of the travel. Ang isang eksperyensyadong fire investigator, madali nilang malaman kung saan nagsimula o kung saan patapos yung tinatawag nating fire travel. Intensity, mga kaibigan, refers to how hot the fire is. The degree of heat given of the fire in the color of the flame oftentimes indicate that some accelerant has been added to the material normally present in the building, and the investigator must look for further evidence pointing to use of such accelerants. Difficulty in extinguishing the fire is often lead to suspect presence of such fluid as gasoline and kerosene. Intensity, guys, kung gaano kalakas o gaano katindi yung apoy na nangyari doon sa area. Odor, sa odor, guys, kung malalaman po natin sa odor o amoy, sa usok na yan, malalaman po natin kung ito ay alcohol, kerosene, o other inflammable liquid materials. Okay? Condition of the content, person tending to set their house on the fire frequently remove object of value either materially or systematically or systematally. Store and other business establishment oftentimes remove a major portion of their content or replace valuable merchandise with out of the style of article. Depends of the condition of the content of the condition of the area that has been ignited, the point of origin of the na fire natin. Doors and windows, naka-apekto rin po sa doors and windows natin yung mga passageway, kung yan. Locked doors and obstructed entrance passageway sometimes point to an attempt to inspect firm and their fight to put out the fire. Doors and windows showing the signs of the forced entry may point to arson preceded by burglary or arson by someone without a key to the premises. No? Dito po natin malalaman sa doors and windows natin kung there's a possible entry or forcible entry na naganap po para magkaroon ng set of fire na tinatawag natin. Other suspicious circumstances, mga kaibigan, interested bystander, familiar faces, discovery of the some object which might be a part of the mechanical fire setting device among the debris. No? Mga suspicious circumstances natin, guys, yung mga tambay dyan, yung mga familiar faces dyan sa area nyo, no? That will be considered as a suspect in the arson. Yan, content inventory. All portion of the structure should be carefully inventoried by the investigator, whether or not the contents were damaged by the fire. There serve two purposes, mga kaibigan. For the protection of the investigator who may be called on to prove the appearance and contents of the scene at the time of their possession. Number two, more importantly, in ascertaining what the contents of the structure were at the time of the fire. This can be correlated with the actual content when the fire is out. And the post-fire inventory should be carefully checked against the inventory and prepared by the owner of the or tenant. Sa inventory, guys, na magaganap, no, talagang kaya yung investigator nagkakaroon ng inventory kung ano ba yung damage, kung gaano ba kalawak yun ang damage dun sa area of responsibility or the area that had been damaged in the arson cases, mga kaibigan, talagang magkakaroon ng inventory yan, no? Kasi kung ano yung mga casualties, ano ba yung mga area na pwede nating ma-inventory, kung gaano ba kalawak yung mga casualties, guys, kung gaano kalaki o gaano kapinsala yung naganap dun sa arson. BP arson procedure. Dito na tayo, guys, sa BP arson procedure, mga kaibigan. Kakaunti na lang to. Initial action during fire alarm, guys. Upon notification of the fire alarm, the FAI assigned will respond, conduct initial inquiry through interview of all available witnesses. Dito guys, sa BFP, arson and procedure, upon you are first responder in the area, you have to have an inquiry in the area, no? Lalo na yung mga witnesses na pwede nating makuha doon sa area of responsibility. If the focal point of origin is ascertained, the FAI shall exert effort to preserve the evidential value and the focal point of the fire that might be destroyed due to excessive flooding in the area. Secure and protect the fire scene to avoid it and its evidence from being mutilated, altered, and contaminated, or the MAC, no? MAC rule natin. Initial action, guys. In the event of the FAI discovered suspected hazardous materials, suspected illegal or irregulated chemicals, during the conduct of investigation of the burned premises, the circumstances shall be immediately reported to proper office or the BP Hazardous Material Office or other law enforcement agencies. Kung ito po ba ay combustible materials o hazardous materials, guys, talagang ito kailangan nating report sa mga BP personnel natin. Lalong-lalo na, guys, kung ito ang area niya, no, lalo mga pabrika, tapos ang daming mga bahay na nakapalibot diyan. Nako po, hazardous yan. Dapat doon siya sa area na medyo malayo. Once the fire ground commander o FGC o declare fire out, the FAI shall take cognizance the responsibility of protecting and securing the whole fire scene by sealing, closing the perimeter with barricade tape. Fire lines, this shall be manned by fire personnel or any law enforcement personnel. Guys, no, mayroong batas tayo ngayon, no, na alam ko aprobado na eh. Merong sinusulong na batas si Senador Bato de la Rosa na kung saan bibigyan po ng fire, i-issue ng fire po yung baril, gun, yung ating mga BFP personnel. What is the reason behind of that implementing rules and regulation o implementing law? Ginagawa po yan, guys, kasi para yung mga taong kasi 'di ba pag may mga sunog, maraming mga chismosa o mga bystander. Karaniwan, meron nandun pa rin yung mga arsonist natin, no? Talagang gusto pa nilang sumunog. Ginagawa po yan to avoid yung MAC rule na tinatawag natin, the mutilate, alter, or contaminate the evidence itself. Kasi minsan, guys, yung mga tao, mga bystander, hindi mapigilan. Kaya kailangan daw issue, no? Lumalaban pa nga sa Bureau of Fire Protection. Kaya yan, ang proposed measure is to issue a gun to protect not also protect the crime scene itself, but protect their life also, no? Kasi delikado rin naman talaga ang buhay nila dyan, guys, no? Delikado rin ang trabaho nila kasi sunog po ang kanilang pangunahing trabaho dyan. Duties of the fire arson investigator: perform a systematic scientific examination and visual reconstruction of the fire scene. This includes the complete documentation and proper recording of the fire area by the use of photography, diagrammatic sketch and notes. The diagrammatic sketch should clearly depict the fire scene in the area of point of origin, area of measurements, location of the evidence, and other important details. The work of the fire arson investigator, yan, pumasok na ulit yan. Photographing, recording, identifying the point of origin, location, and measurement. They need to conduct all of the duties and responsibilities of arson investigator. Conduct interview to all witnesses in accordance to the law. The interview should be done in a question and answer form and shall be done under oath, preferably by a person of authority whenever available or by administered by the concerned BFP officer with the rank of inspector and above. The authority of BFP officer to administer oath is pursuant to the provision of the Chapter 3, Section 50 of the RA 6975. All witnesses to be conducted with formal interview shall be formally invited to the fire station investigation office concerned in a form of invitation letter. Karaniwan po na nagkakandak ng tinatawag nating question and answer form is the rank of the inspector. Sila po ang nagkakandak ng mga interview na tinatawag po natin according to Chapter 3 of Section 50 of the Republic Act 6975. This we considered are formally invited or the invitation letter, no? Letter C, conduct thorough analysis of the fire scene in order to identify the ignition of source, initial materials ignited, and other factors which bring them together to produce a fire. Examination of fire spread and fire pattern, which include the thermal effects of materials such as charring, exudation, consumption of combustibles, smoke and soot deposit, distortion or melting effect, color changes of material, structure, and structural collapse must be conducted dito sa conduct through analysis of the fire scene in order to identify ignition source. Kailangan po natin kung yung fire spread and fire pattern, we need to identify each everyone, no, to have a good investigation in the arson. Identify the recognize and collect physical evidence found at the fire scene that have probative value on fire cause determination. Piece of evidence to be collected shall be photographed first and shall be collected in the presence of the witness independent to the investigating body. Proper documentation, sealing, packaging of evidence recovered in prior to the submission to Arson Laboratory Section or the ALS of the BFP National Headquarters for laboratory examination shall be observed. Lahat po ng probative value of collect physical evidence that we collected in the arson investigation, we need to have a proper photogration, proper documentation, sealing and packaging of evidence, no? In order to have in the laboratory, talagang makita po yung evidence na yun. Guidelines in the handling of preservation, guys. Transport and submission of physical evidence to the arson lab section. The first phase, the FAI shall prepare listing of documents needed to accomplish and submitted by the fire victim, building occupant, and other parties affected by fire. Yan po yung first phase natin. Ito po, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Ito po yung mga kailangan upang dito sa first phase natin, mga documents regarding the fire arson investigation process. Affidavit of loss pertaining to fire damage, itemized and duly notarized. Letter B, shown statement of loss submitted to insurance adjuster and companies. Letter C, latest complete inventory stock prior to the fire incident. Letter D, complete inventory of salvage items after the fire incident. Letter E, complete copies of insurance policies to include co-insurance. Letter F, income tax return or ITR for the last 3 years. Financial statement for the last 3 years. Balance sheets for the last 3 years. Letter I, mayor's permit and business license. Letter J, occupancy permit, Department of Trade and Industry, DTI registration. Letter L, Securities and Exchange Commission registration. M, latest fire safety inspection certificate or FIAC. Complete list of employees, approved floor, building and electrical plans. Copy of lease contract agreement, land title, and tax declaration. Guys, from F to Q, guys, ito guys, talagang kailangan po pagdating sa business, no? Talagang may pe-present nila. Pero from A to E, guys, ito naman, pag nagkaroon ng sunog, yan po yung kailangan nilang gawin. Ito, may supporting documents na sila dyan. Alam na nila yan. The above listed documents to be secured to the fire victim will vary based on the type of occupancy or the involved structure gutted by fire. Any other documents that may be irrelevant based on the type of occupancy may not be required. In addition, the FAI also authorized to require any other pertinent documents, materials, and items to the fire victims as determined by the FAI concerned that will give support to the conduct of investigation. Okay, the guidance also, the 1.2, the FAI must inform all concerned person, occupants, and management of the burned premises that the fire scene is restricted to entry to any person until the investigation being conducted by the VFP at the burned premises is completed and terminated. Kailangan po nating i-notify yung mga nakatira doon sa area na hindi po pwede nilang tirahan ulit hangga't hindi po nagkakaroon ng proper investigation ng ating Bureau of Fire personnel, no? Kasi magkakaroon po yan na yan. Ito ay talagang any removal, retrieval of item restored at the scene of the fire, demolition, reconstruction, and rehabilitation of the fire scene is only allowed upon the securing approval to the investigating body through submission of formal written request by the fire victim. Kailangan muna nila guys magkaroon ng request bago sila makalipat ulit dun sa bahay na nasunog. Kasi guys, kailangan kasi yan, ano pa yan, ikakandak mo sila ng investigation process yan. Hindi naman basta-basta i-occupy ka agad yan. Kinabukasan, occupy, no. They need, Bureau of Fire Protection conducted an investigation itself kung ano ba yung nangyari dun sa area. Guidelines 1.3, in such event that a death result from a fire or incident or fatal fires, the concerned FAI shall immediately sought the assistance of the Philippine National Police of the Crime Operation or the PNP SOCO or any other legal recognized group for lifting or autopsy of the cadaver body found at the fire crime scene. Sa guidelines ng VFP guys, 1.3, kapag meron pong namatay o fatal injuries no dun sa area natin, kailangan po ng tulong ng scene of the crime operation o the SOCO itself. Fatalities in fire. Aside from the cause of the fire, whenever a fire death occurs, the investigator must seek the answer to identity of the victim of or victims, determination. Siguro hinto muna dito guys, no? Para doon ko na lang i-discuss dito. Dito ko na hinto guys, sa fatality of fire. Anong ito? $302. Discuss ko